Hello everyone.
Now Varian Wrynn was born and his father was named King Lian.
Oh, listen how cute I sound back then. This video is from April 2012 and one of the first lore videos that I've ever done. Since that time, Varian has done a lot more in the storyline, and with the start of a brand new year, let's honor the man that gave everything to save his world. There's quite a bit to go through, so we'll probably need a couple of parts to cover it all, but let's just begin and see how far we can go, shall we?
For the Alliance.
Varian Wrynn was born into the royal family, prince to the kingdom of Stormwind. His father, Wrynn, ruled the kingdom, and at his side were his childhood friends Anduin as a warrior, a knight's champion to the king, and the guardian Medivh. The Guardian was magically empowered to defend the kingdom, and things were relatively peaceful for a time. That is, until the spirit of Sargeras, hidden within Medivh, made contact with the Orcish warlock Gul'dan. Sargeras wanted to weaken the world and get it ready for Legion invasion, and the Orcish Horde were perfect for this task. They worked together on opening the Dark Portal, war was spreading to Azeroth, and Stormwind rallied to defend its kingdom. The good side of Medivh was still doing his best to fight back against Sargeras, and he was placing people around him who could be his downfall. People like his apprentice Khadgar, but also the half-orc, half-Draenei, Garona half-Orcan. Garona was bred and trained in order of Gul'dan to become the perfect assassin, had spells placed on her mind to keep her obedient, and she was sent by Gul'dan to keep an eye on Medivh. She eventually revealed herself to Khadgar, seeing humans as a potential means of escaping Gul'dan, and they eventually discovered Medivh's corruption. Quickly fleeing the Tower of Karazhan, they made their way to Stormwind to inform them all about what was going on. Anduin believed them, and together with some more soldiers, they made their way back into the tower to confront the Guardian. There, a vision was shown to Garona and Khadgar, a vision in which her future self, she murdered King Lane, and both of them knew it to be true. Regardless, the vision ended and the battle with Medivh was on. He literally drained the youth out of Khadgar, making him look like a very old man, but together they were able to stab him, and as Sargeras tried to manifest, they chopped off his head and they put an end to this threat. The threat of Sargeras might have been dealt with, but the Horde's invasion was still on its way. Despite the vision that they had seen in the tower, Garona was still allowed into Stormwind's court, and she became a trusted confidant to the king. They now had to defend the realm without the powers of the Guardian at their side, so Lothar, champion of Stormwind, he rallied their people in an attempt to stop the massive numbers of the Horde. Perhaps they believed that the vision they were shown was not guaranteed, and this would be a great mistake. Gul'dan's spells placed in Garona's mind, the very weapons in her hands, they manipulated her and they forced her to do the unthinkable.
Bad news, sire. The clans are united under Black Hand in this assault. They will stand together until Stormwind has fallen. Gul'dan is bringing up his warlocks by nightfall. Until then, the Blackrock clan will be trying to take the eastern wall.
1,000 deaths. We will hold until the reinforcements come. As long as men with stout hearts are manning the walls and the throne, Stormwind will hold.
The Orc leaders agree with your assessment.
Varian walked into the room and he found Garona clutching the bloody knife. Tears were streaming down her cheeks. Stormwind was eventually destroyed by the orcs, and Anduin took all those that he could, including Prince Varian and Khadgar, and they set sail to the land of Lordaeron. The world had to be warned about the threat of the Horde. None could stand alone in this war. They had to unite and fight back. Now, as you might imagine, the tale of a force so strong that none of the kingdoms could stand against it, it was quite a tale to tell, and not everyone was immediately convinced. Some of them, like Gant Greymane, ruler of Gilneas, he believed that his kingdom was strong enough to crush any who would attempt to make landfall on their southern coast, and then people like King Perinold, ruler of Alterac, he wondered if they could not simply negotiate with them. But Lothar's words were eventually able to convince them that the Horde wanted their world and would settle for nothing less, and that their might required them to stand together. So it was that the Alliance of Lordaeron was formed, and the war for the world was on. Varian himself was not directly involved in the war effort. At such a young age, he had seen everything that he had known, his family, his kingdom, burned to ashes by the orcs. King Terenas, the ruler of Lordaeron, he was kind and wise. King Lane had been a very good man, and they counted him as a friend and ally, and they would do everything in their power to restore Varian to his throne. More than that, Terenas also realized that Varian needed to keep hearing his title of prince, needed to know that he was still respected, that he was still part of the royal family, when he had lost absolutely everything but his life. The boy was left in the care of Tyrannus' son Arthas, who didn't really know what to say to Varian, so he told him about this fowl that he had seen being born yesterday. It sounded insane, but it was the first thing that sprang to his mind, and he spoke earnestly. Varian turned toward him and gazed at him for a long moment. Emotions flitted across his face: offense, disbelief, gratitude, yearning, understanding. Suddenly, the brown eyes filled with tears, and Varian looked away. He folded his arms and hunched in on himself. His shoulders shaken with sobs, he did his best to muffle. They came out anyway. Harsh, raking sounds of mourning for a father, a kingdom, a way of life that he probably hadn't been able to grieve until this precise minute. Arthas squeezed his arm and felt it rigid as stone beneath his fingers. "I hate winter," Varian sobbed, and the depth of the hurt conveyed by those 3 simple words, a seeming non sequitur, humbled Arthas. Unable to watch such raw pain, yet powerless to do anything about it, he dropped his hand, turned away, and stared out the window. Outside, the snow continued to fall. These two boys grew very close during their time together. Although their first meeting had been laced with grief and awkwardness, Arthas had discovered that Varian had actually a strong spirit and a generally optimistic outlook. They also discovered that Varian was far superior when it came to fighting. Tyrannus had always been trying to protect his son, which is why his training hadn't really begun yet. Varian's father had also tried to protect him, but he had failed. The realities of life have a way of intruding like that, but Varian promised his new friends that when the war was over and proper trainers could be spared again, that they would talk to the king together. And the war would eventually be over. The Alliance of Lordaeron, they were able to defeat the Horde, but the price of the victory was great. Many lives were lost, including that of Anduin Lothar, but they'd reclaimed the world and rebuilding had to be done. The orcs that surrendered, they were placed within internment camps, while the reconstruction of Stormwind and even the building of Nethergard Keep, aiming to keep an eye on the Dark Portal, they were placed upon the shoulders of the Stonemasons Guild. The leader of this guild was Edwin Van Cleef, and the camps and all this rebuilding, it naturally cost a lot of gold, which once again led to a bit of discussion amongst the rulers. Greymane particularly wondered why they had to spend so much gold on a wall, a tower and a single keep, just to keep an eye on the Dark Portal, but Varian asked them how great of a price they put on their safety. Nothing worth having ever comes cheaply, and Tyrannus, he was very proud of the recently crowned young king of Stormwind, who had grown up to be a clever, charming, noble young man, a natural leader and a gifted diplomat for one so young, despite all they had lost at such young age. Their gold was put to good use, since Stormwind had not only been rebuilt, it was even stronger and better than before. They've added the Dwarven District, they've added the deep run tram constructed by the gnomes to make passage to Ironforge easier, and this kept the alliance between the humans and dwarves strong. Building Nethergard Keep was also a very good idea, since the Dark Portal would reopen and the Horde came back to Azeroth. This time, not in an attempt to conquer the planet, this time they came to collect powerful artifacts, which allowed them to open up more portals and invade different worlds. The Alliance of Lordaeron, the Sons of Lothar, they figured out what was going on, and they realized that they could not let the Horde go through with this. They could not allow them to spread the same pain and suffering as they had brought to Azeroth, so people like Trevelyan, Illyria Windrunner, Khadgar, Círdan Wildhammer, and Dana of Trollbane, they took their troops and they ventured forth through the Dark Portal to take the battle to the Orcs' own worlds. They were successful in stopping them from invading different worlds, but they were also forced to close the Dark Portal from Draenor's side. The people back in Azeroth, they had no idea what actually happened to them, if they were still alive or all gone. So to honor these brave Sons of Lothar, statues were built in front of Stormwind, so that all who would enter the city, that they could gaze upon those who had given their all to save the world. With the Dark Portal closed once again, a rare, relative time of peace entered Varian's life. He fell in love with Tivan Illyrian and had a child that they named Anduin, in honor of the man who had done so very much for the kingdom. Arthas Menethil also made his way to the city in one of the biggest celebrations Stormwind had ever seen. It was time for him to officially become a paladin, part of the Knights of the Silver Hand, and Varian, he had opened up the palace to all visiting royalty and their attendants. The boyhood friends had spent the night before the ceremony drinking and talking, even gone to the armory, they fetched some wooden training swords, and they went at each other. Varian had an early start on training, and he'd always been good, and now he was even better, but so was Arthas. He'd been training rigorously and gave as good as he got. The alcohol that they'd consumed made him only slightly worse, but the next day was all about formalities. Once the ceremony was over and Arthas was accepted in the light's grace, Varian tried to clap his friend on the shoulder, only to have his hand sting when he struck the hard metal of the shoulder plates. Much laughter was added at, but as most of you know by now, dark times were ahead of Arthas, and the same can be said for Varian, since amongst the court of Stormwind, a black dragon was plotting and scheming. On the orders of Deathwing, Onyxia disguised herself as Lady Katrana Prestor, and she convinced the nobles to not pay the Stonemasons Guild for their work. In this time, Varian was busy riding from one end of his kingdom to the other, protecting his people from raiding parties of orc stragglers and meeting with spies who were searching for the assassin Garona. And on top of all of that, he was directing the restoration of his kingdom. He was gone for months on end and had delegated the rebuilding of Stormwind Keep to the House of Nobles, but upon returning, he did his best to mediate the situation and he failed. For not getting paid, Van Cleef led his guild rioting through the streets as they escaped the city. The riot was dangerous and chaotic, and in the mass of confusion, Varian's wife Tiffin was killed. The death of his beloved sent the king into a deep depression, and Onyxia used her magic to feed on it, influence his mind, and rule from behind the curtains. Only Anduin was able to pierce the darkness, bring his father back to the light, and fight against her control. This meant that the Black Dragon had to come up with a new plan to regain control, and this time she decided to put the Defiance Brotherhood, those of the Stonemasons Guild had formed this organization, decided to put those guys to good use. Varian was convinced to join a conference at Fedamore to discuss a pact between the new Orcish leader named Thrall and the people of Stormwind. Jaina Proudmoore did not have the history with the orcs as Varian had. Thrall had liberated his people from their internment camps and he had formed his new horde. Jaina and Thrall even stood side by side against the demonic forces of the Burning Legion during Warcraft 3, and Jaina was now doing her best to get some sort of peace between the orcs and the humans. As you might imagine, Varian was not too keen on sitting down with the people that had murdered his father and destroyed his kingdom, but his son convinced him to at least go and hear Thrall out. Now on his way to Fedamore, the king of Stormwind was attacked by the Defias, hidden amongst his crew, and they brought him straight to the waiting claws of Onyxia. She used her magic to split Varian in two, one containing Varian's will, which he planned on disposing, and one Varian which he could easily manipulate and control. She might have gotten away with it too, was it not for the Naga attacking her just as she was about to strike. In the confusion that followed, the whaled Varian was able to jump into the water, strike his head on something, lose his memory, but he did keep his life. The other Varian was taken by the Naga, later on ransomed back to Stormwind to rule the kingdom and re-enter the Dragon's Web and be further ensorcelled. Which means that at this point, Varian's story actually splits in two, since there are now two versions of him in the world. Let's begin with the whaled Varian. This one would wash up on the shores of Durotar. There, on the beach, the orcs were spotting a human waking up to the mouth of a hungry crocolisk. Bets were quickly placed on the outcome of the fight, but Rhaegar Earthfury's experienced eyes, they immediately could tell that this human was a very well-trained fighter. Varian managed to put up a good fight, but it seems like the crocolisk was about to win. Rhaegar couldn't let his new prize be eaten, so a quick lightning bolt ended the life of the wild beast, but it wasn't required, since Varian, he had placed himself in such a way that the beast's own weight placed a stake through its heart. Rhaegar asked Varian who he was, and the human, to his shock and surprise, he doesn't remember anything. This made it all the easier for Rhaegar to capture Varian, despite the treaty between the Horde and the Alliance, and force him into his arena team, together with people like Valera Sanguinar and the druid Bror Baremantle.
I will be your death!
At first, these three unlikely allies, they were not really willing to work together. Varian didn't even want to fight. They considered giving him the taste of the whip for a bit, but Rhaegar was wise enough to know that if they placed his back against the wall, Varian would have to fight. His team is then pitched against another. Valera brashly enters the fight, and Bro and Varian, they have no choice but to go after her. Despite losing his memory, at his core, Varian still knows how to fight, and their group emerged victorious. For completing their gladiator training, Earthfury allows them to choose a weapon from the Halls of Legends within Orgrimmar. These weapons, they will carry them into the arena at Dire Maul. Valera finds a set of orc daggers to her liking, Bro picks up a staff carved in the likeness of a stag, and Varian finds a belt. A belt that triggers his memory. A vision of Anduin Lothar towering over him with a stormy sea in the background. This is the moment where he and Lothar journey to Lordaeron. This belt belonged to the line of Azeroth and has found his way back to Varian. With the belt in his possession, he entered the Dire Maul arena, where none could believe that Rhaegar's ragtag team of untried fighters could even make it through the first round. Despite their first expectations though, their arena team did great, overcame any challenge placed in front of them. Varian is able to put up such a good fight that he manages to win over the crowd's favor. They cheer his new nickname, Logash, meaning Ghost Wolf, a fitting name for the hero of Dire Maul.
I am Varian, but I am also Logash.
Winning the fight had earned Rhaegar quite a bit of money, and he's ready to leave Dire Maul behind. But before he does, he decides that Valera, she doesn't make for the best team player, and he sells her to become a leader of her own team. Bro and Varian, they hate the idea of leaving Valera behind, but such is the life of a slave. They set out to Thunderbluff to meet up with Meg of her Grim Totem and find a new recruit for their team amongst the Tauren. Now Varian, he's still trying to regain his memory, and although he receives flashes from time to time, he still doesn't really know who he is or what he's supposed to do with himself. Brawl then recommends to visit the Pools of Vision for a cleansing ritual to see if they can find some answers and prevent Varian to be lost in his memories. Mega forewarns them that it would be unwise to go to the caves right now, since an elemental has been let loose inside, but Varian and Brawl, they're more than willing to take their chances. While meditating, both fighters receive their own visions, and Varian finds out that he has a son, that there are people who need him, so he can no longer stay with Rhaegar. After take care of the elemental that they've been warned about, they're invited to join Rhaegar and Hamul Runetotem for dinner, since Hamul, he expected that it was actually Megafa who had summoned the elemental in the first place, and now she had to pretend to be happy about it being destroyed. This made the old druid very happy, and as they sit down, he tells them the tale behind Varian's new nickname. Logash, also known as Gul'dan, is a demigod which fought against the Legion, but he's been part of legends for millennia. Each culture has their own version, but one thing always stays the same. His ferocity and will was able to push himself through the boundaries of the afterlife to aid his people. Giving Varian this nickname was a compliment to his skills as a fighter, and as we would later find out, means so much more to Varian as a character. We'll get to that later on though. Now, with the tale done, Hamul gives Varian a feather as a thank you for destroying the elemental. Brawl immediately recognized the feather and the intention behind it, considering that he and Hamul are both druids. With the feather, he's able to summon the aid of a hippogriff, and on his back he and Varian escape their slave master. Rhaegar's guards, they quickly go after them, but Rhaegar himself isn't too worried about his top fighters making an escape. They've earned his investment in them 1,000 times over at Dire Maul, and he always knew that this day was coming. The comics then dive a little bit deeper into Brawl's story arc, until he and Varian, they meet up with Thrawn the Westwind, who then tells them to go to the king's original destiny, to go back to Faramore Isle. There, the human sorceress Jaina Proudmoore, she doesn't recognize Varian at face value, and she helps Varian with recovering more of his memory. They discover that he must be Varian Wrynn, the lost king of Stormwind. They'd given up hope on him, but despite not being able to uncover all his memories, Jaina is certain that he is the one and he must make his way back to Stormwind, but to do so carefully. They don't know the identity of his enemies, and his son Anduin is still in the city. His life is still at risk. A ship carried the king, Brawl, and even Valera, who by this time had escaped a new team, found a way back to them. All of them set sail across the sea. Their journey is not that easy though. Once again, the Naga are on the attack, and these are the same Naga that also captured and ransomed the other Varian. In their struggle, the Naga Siren strikes at Varian with lightning, which is why he has the scar on his face. No one, not the Naga nor the Scourge, nor the fiery lords of the Burning Legion, will keep Varian away from his people. He might be king, but he's still every inch the champion gladiator, as he slices the Naga Siren in two. Their journey to Stormwind would take them to Menethil Harbor and eventually even Ironforge. But first, let's talk about what happened with the other Varian, since, like I mentioned, this version was missing for a while, and in his absence, young Anduin Wrynn, he was crowned king, which is why back in Classic, we had King Anduin in Stormwind. While truthfully, he was only a figurehead, and people like High Lord Bolvar Fordragon and Lady Katrana Prestor, they were the real rulers in Varian's absence. Over a year ago, after leaving the city on his diplomatic mission, the people gathered to welcome the lost king home, ransomed back with the money earned from a special tax, money once again taken from the people. They had paid a hefty price to see their king return, and worse yet, this Varian didn't at all seem concerned about the well-being of his citizens. He only had eyes for the beauty of Katrana, for balls and hunts. When Magni Bronzewitch showed up to ask for aid against the Dark Island dwarves, Varian, or I should say Katrana, they flat out refused the dwarf with the excuse that it was more a personal war, considering that Magni's daughter Moira, she had left him, fallen in love, and even got pregnant with the leader of the Dark Irons. Insulted to the core, Magni was more than ready to leave the city and find out more about this real Varian he had been told about by Jaina. Anduin didn't understand what was going on. This was not the father that he had known, and he talked about his suspicions with Magni, and he also asked Bolvar to investigate. He even openly questioned his own father, how it was that if he was taken by the Defiance, how it was that the Naga were the ones who put him up for ransom. Varian simply laughed it off, yet from the shadows, Prester saw the threat of the child who could undo everything she'd worked so hard for to achieve. A threat that had to be taken care of. So as father and son were out for a ride, and Anduin tried to tell his father of Windsor's theory as to what's been going on in Stormwind, Prester used their favorite weapon, a rock, to spook Anduin's horse. His father had to make a dive to save his beloved son, and as he holds his son's life in his hands, visions envelop him. Visions of the past, of the Defiance kidnapping him, of searing agony, of a Naga attack, and of another cliff and almost near death. Prester's plans of getting rid of Anduin, they failed horribly, and Bolvar noticed how just a touch from Katrana that it befuddles the king, almost as if he were bewitched. He now knows that Anduin is right. Something's going on here, and he's sure that Marshal Winsor's reports that will make for some interesting reading. The only problem was that Windsor, he was captured by the Dark Island Dwarves, and he's being held within the Blackrock depths. Now in-game, this was actually part of the Onyxia Attunement questline, in which adventurers, they went in to save him and bring him back to Stormwind. In the comics though, it's actually the Wild Varian in his party who get the honor to do so. By this time, they've made their way to Ironforge, and of course Magni is more than willing to believe that this is the real Varian, since this one has the strong will that he remembers, and has no problem with helping the dwarves. A small party rides out to Blackrock Mountain, they save Windsor, and they escort him back to Stormwind. There he reveals to all what exactly has been going on, that the Black Dragon Onyxia, that she had tried to usurp Stormwind's throne, and naturally, Onyxia isn't quite happy. She throws away her disguise, and so do the guards, who are actually part of a Black Dragon brood, and a fierce battle takes place right there in the throne room. Where first, the two variants, they focus on each other, because they both believe the other to be a fraud, and Anduin reminds them that there's a Black Dragon in their keep murdering all of their people. He was always a bright lad, so the two sides of Varian, they band together and they strike out at Onyxia, who realizes that her time in Stormwind is at an end. Before she goes though, she makes sure that Windsor doesn't survive that encounter, and she even kidnaps young Anduin back to her lair. For the moment, the two kings will hold on to their truce to save their son, and Windsor's investigation was thorough. He even discovered that Onyxia's lair that is near Fedamore, so the journey once again takes him to Jaina. She tells them that before they're going to confront the dragon, they must first know what she has done to them. Protective enchantments around the tower, it allows them to remember their physical connection. It enables them to fill in the gaps that they could not before, and now they remember everything. They understand that neither of them is a fake. They are two sides of a coin, more than brothers. They were divided, yet each of them had fought against the Black Dragon schemes on their own. One with sheer will, who became Logash, champion gladiator, and one of them who was ransomed back and found his resolve to break free once again. For such formidable twins, Jaina has a twin gift. Two magical elven blades called Shalator and Elamane, also known as Shadowrender and Reaver. These blades were forged during the War of the Ancients. They were wielded by twin warriors, Vorillian and Lovelian. Between these two variants, they have twice the strength, twice the wisdom, twice the will to strike at Onyxia's dark heart. And strike out they do. The might of their entire party is thrown at Onyxia. People are running over X, they are spawning more whelps into the battlefield, and the Black Dragon herself, she decides that it's time to end this once and for all. She uses her magic in an attempt to break the will of her puppet, a spell that sounds familiar to the Varians, one that nearly destroyed them back on the island. The ransomed Varian jumps in front of his brother, the will of Stormwind's king, and he tells him to live on, slay this dragon, and save their son. For a long moment, there's a dead silence in the depths of the dragon's lair, until Varian Wrynn, one single being once again, rises up from the smoke. The twin blades given by Jaina, they've also merged into one, forming the legendary blade Shalamain, and its might, combined with all that Varian has to offer, is enough to slay the broodmother and save not only his son, but also their kingdom from her foul presence. Her head is then put on display for all of Stormwind to see, to honor the heroic deeds that were done on this day. This is where we'll end Varian's story for today, but his tale is far from over. There are negotiations to be had at Fedamore, and although Varian has been restored into one single being, he will need time to find his balance to deal with both his Logash side and his human prince side. Last time, we began the story of Varian Wrynn, in which we spoke about his youth, Stormwind falling to the might of the Horde, him being kidnapped on his way to Fedamore, until his eventual restoration into one single being. The reason for traveling to Fedamore in the first place was to negotiate with Thrall, leader of the Horde, to see if some sort of peace between the Alliance and Horde was possible. Keep in mind that Varian had lost everything he ever knew to the orcs, so to sit down with them was a big step, but his son Anduin was at his side, giving him some solid advice. There was also Valera Sanguinar, who joined them for this meeting, while Thrall brought with him Rhaegar Earthfury and Garrosh Hellscream, son of Gromush. To make sure that their negotiations would go peaceful, both sides had agreed to lay down their arms before sitting down. Actually doing so right there in a moment, it proved to be a little bit more difficult, but it was once again Anduin showing the way by putting down his weapon first. There was a diplomat amongst them after all, and all of them followed his example, and then they sat down. They discussed their time as slave gladiators for Rhaegar, something which Thrall himself had also experienced with only at the hands of humans. They discussed what they might be able to trade with each other, but Garrosh thought that all of this was nonsense, a discussion fit for merchants. Why should the proud and powerful orcs make concessions when they have the strength to take what they want? To which Anduin, he countered his question by asking why they would waste warriors and resources in battle when a few words would bring them much greater profit. Against all odds, the negotiations were going well, and Thrall and Varian, they were getting along with each other. That is, until Garona half-Orcan, the same Garona that had murdered Varian's father, she attacked at Theramore. She had been found by the ogre Cho'Gall, someone who would work closely together with Gul'dan, and he knew about those magical spells placed on her mind. She was once again forced to fight, and accusations were quickly tossed around. Garrosh saw this as human treachery, while Varian, he recognized Garona immediately, and he believed that she was an assassin sent over by Thrall. It was clear to him that treachery still remained the orc's main tool of diplomacy, while Thrall, he had no idea who this even was. Those that could look beyond their prejudice, they saw that races of both factions were fighting with Garona, but the damage was already done. Despite being able to fight back and even capture Garona, the negotiations at Theramore had failed. Jaina would continue the story with Garona and discover Cho'Gall's plans, but Varian and Thrall, they had to return home to focus their attention on the Scourge threat, since by this time, Arthas the Lich King, he'd woken up and it was time to begin the expansion, Wrath of the Lich King. After repelling the initial invading force during the pre-event, both the Alliance and the Horde, they ventured forth into the cold heart of Northrend. High Lord Tyrion Fordring made a personal request to allow the recently freed Death Knights into the faction, and with their might at our side, we battled with the undead forces, but Varian himself, he didn't play a major part at the start. Instead, we saw heroes like Bolvar Forgedragon take the stage, as both the Alliance and Horde, they tried to work together at the Wrathgate, but there, tragedy struck.
Arthas! The blood of your father, of your people, demands justice! Come forth, coward, and answer for your crimes!
You speak of justice, of cowardice. I will show you the justice of the grave, and the true meaning of fear. Enough talk! Let it be finished!
The Lich King was able to one-shot Draenor Saurfang, Varrock Saurfang's son, and he claimed his soul. On top of that, Sylvanas Windrunner and the Forsaken, they'd been developing a plague that would kill both the living and the undead. She was hell-bent on claiming vengeance for what Arthas did to her, but what she didn't know was that the Dreadlord Varimafras and Grand Apothecary Putris, they were not loyal.
You will pay for all the lives you've stolen, traitor!
Boldly stated, but there is nothing you can... What?
Did you think we had forgotten? Did you think we had forgiven? Behold now, the terrible vengeance of the Forsaken!
Sylvanas.
Death to the Scourge! And death to the living! Now, all can see. This is the hour of the Forsaken.
We're finished. No escape for any of us.
Both the Alliance and Horde were hit hard by the Forsaken's devastating weapons. Sylvanas had not expected this betrayal, and she also lost her Undercity. Naturally, Varian was extremely pissed at what had happened. Sylvanas might have been betrayed by these people, but Thrall still allowed her to develop this plague in the first place. They had lost Bolvar Forgedragon, the man who had always been there for him, had been trusted with ruling the kingdom in his stead, and had saved his life countless of times. It was time to make those responsible pay for their crimes, as both sides went in for the battle for the Undercity, but of course each of them had their own motivations.
Heroes of the Alliance, your king calls. Gather behind me at the entrance to the sewers. Hidden inside this defiled city is the wretch responsible for murdering our brothers and sisters at the Wrathgate. He must be brought to justice. The march upon the Undercity begins now. Be empowered by your king's strength. Follow me, heroes, for the glory of the Alliance. Soldiers fall in. Guard the halls. Your aberrations are no match for the Alliance, Putress. We're coming for you.
What's happened here? There are corpses everywhere. The stench. Overwhelming.
Horde. By the looks of the struggle, they're here in force. Somewhere. Stay alert and on guard. There's no telling what horrors await us.
Welcome to my kingdom of darkness. Did you enjoy my minion's terrible creation? Potent, is it not? But enough prattling. You wish to reclaim your city. Come then, heroes. Your souls will fuel the host. You will have this place back in pieces.
Great Water Spirit, wash away this corruption. Attack! Is that all, demon? Have you nothing left to throw at us? What is this?
Welcome to your future. What little there is left of it. Too long. Tireless, endless planning. It will not end like this. More time. The Master is near. I cannot hold. Destabilizing.
You have failed me, Varian.
1,000 pardons, Master. I will deal with these intruders myself. Years wasted.
We are victorious! The Undercity belongs to the Horde once more! Loktar! There's nowhere to run, monster.
Stare into the abyss and watch as it blackens your souls! You are no match for my creations! This cannot be happening!
And justice is served. What say you now, Putress? Look around you, brothers and sisters. Open your eyes. Look at what they've done to our kingdom. How much longer will we allow these savages free reign in our world? I have seen the Horde's world. I've been inside their cities, inside their minds. I know what evil lies in the hearts of orcs. The Undercity belongs to the Horde once more! Loktar! Thrall, here. Onward! We end this now.
Varian, stop! I won't help you do this.
You should all know. The orcs have a battle cry. Loktar Ogar. It means victory or death. Fitting. To the throne room! I was away for too long. My absence cost us the lives of some of our greatest heroes. Trash like you and this evil witch were allowed to roam free. unchecked. But the time has come to make things right. To disband your treacherous kingdom of murderers and thieves. Putris was the first strike. Many more will come. I've waited a long time for this, Thrall. For every time I was thrown into one of your damned arenas. For every time I killed a green-skinned aberration like you. I could think of only one thing. What our world could be without you and your twisted horde. It ends now, Warchief. Attack! For Stormwind! For Bolvar! For the Alliance!
Varian, no! Stop! It did not have to be like this.
It ends like it began. All that we have fought for in this world is lost. The hopes and dreams carried by my father and mother, by Doomhammer, gone.
The Alliance took down Putris, while the Horde dealt with Varian and they reclaimed the Undercity. The events at the Wrathgate, they didn't exactly help the relationship between the Alliance and the Horde, and who knows how this encounter would have ended if Jaina had not intervened. Things would only get worse at this point, as Garrosh had not changed his mind about the Alliance. Varian's hatred, it burned deep in his heart, and the old god Yogg-Saron was breaking out of his prison within Ulduar. This was such a serious threat to the world that both factions would have to take action, but as you might imagine, that didn't go over too well.
How could we have missed this until now? King Varian, thank you for coming on such short notice.
What's this all about, Ronan?
I've called you here to ask for your help. While our efforts against the Lich King press on, Bran here has brought us frightening news of the horrors beneath Ulduar, and of its dark prisoner.
Prisoner? Huh. With its binding shattered, its influence unchecked, it's gonna come after us, and we're gonna be the prisoners.
You can see now what we're up against. If this evil is not stopped, then the armies of the Death God will march on our doorstep.
You'll have to excuse me.
Well, what do you propose we do?
Thrall, what are you doing here so soon?
The summons sounded dire, Jaina. What's happened?
Bran Bronzebeard's forces assaulted the gates of Ulduar. They battled the Iron Lords and their cursed minions.
Evasive action! Evasive action!
He won't stop talking about this presence he felt, permeating the great halls, stirring in their minds, chilling their blood. He said, the horror that the Titans imprisoned so long ago, Yogg-Saron has awakened.
I want to see this dwarf, Garrosh, to see the fear in his eyes. Then we'll know if he's telling the truth.
No, wait!
We are going to need all the help we can get if we are...
Thrall!
What are they doing here?
Let me explain.
I thought I smelled the stench of Alliance pigs.
Control yourself.
You want my blood? Come then, dog.
He's mine.
Stop it!
We have all lost! A great deal in this conflict. But we stand to lose everything if we do not stop fighting and work together!
A true war chief would never partner with cowards.
At the Wrathgate, the Horde's partnership killed more of our men than the Scourge. I'm done with your Horde. May this Death God take you all.
You disappoint me, Garrosh.
Varian refused to work together with the Horde, and Garrosh's actions, they greatly disappoint Thrall. The threat of Yogg-Saron was still out there though, so heroes from both factions, they ventured forth into the halls of Ulduar to push him back into his prison. The war against the Lich King, it was still going on, and High Lord Tyrion Fordring, he decided it would be a good idea to hold a little tournament, to see who was worthy to join them in their assault upon Icecrown Citadel.
King Varian, Lady Jaina, welcome to the tournament. Your place in the Colosseum is waiting.
Thank you. It's the least I can do to support this. We need to stand together.
You ask much of me, Tyrion. To sit and watch, trusting the savages to keep themselves in check.
My people are here to ensure that they honor the rules of engagement. It will do your subjects well to see you in the stands.
I'm sure Thrall will have his people under control.
Perhaps. I doubt the effectiveness of this gambit. We'd be better served preparing our armies for the final assault. But if my presence is required in these games to gain your support in the battle, then I will remain. For now.
Now of course, not only the Alliance was invited, the Horde also joined the tournament.
Garrosh, I expect you to control yourself here. I do not want a repeat of the Violet Citadel.
Ha! That was a show of strength worthy of a leader. I only regret I did not kill that human before the mage interfered.
We are guests here, Garrosh, and you will conduct yourself honorably.
What honor is there in thrashing about with blunted sticks? This is a waste of time.
Notice how Garrosh and Varian, that they have very similar views not only towards the other faction, but also the tournament itself. These two at this point in the story, they're very much alike, and we see this again during the tournament itself. One of the encounters is started by Wilfred Fizzlebang, who has just summoned our next challenge, but he's unable to keep control of Jeraxxus, Editor Lord of the Burning Legion, and our challenge just became a little bit more serious.
Treacherous Alliance dogs! You summon a demon lord against warriors of the Horde? Your deaths will be swift.
The Alliance doesn't need the help of a demon lord to deal with Horde filth. Come, pig.
Wilfred was working on his own, of course, but the damage had already been done. This is where the difference in faction happens for the tournaments. As an Alliance player, you're pitched against champions of the Horde, while as a Horde player, Varian will say,
"Our honor has been besmirched. They make wild claims and false accusations against us. I demand justice. Allow my champions to fight in place of your knights, Tyrion. We challenge the Horde."
Very well. I will allow it. Fight with honor.
Fight for the glory of the Alliance, heroes. Honor your king and your people.
Regardless of what side you're fighting for, Tyrion will be disappointed all the same, claiming that this was a shallow and tragic victory. We are weaker as a whole from the losses suffered here today, despite him allowing the challenge to happen in the first place. Ah well, at least we've proven ourselves worthy of joining the Arthur Crusade and their assault upon Icecrown Citadel, and you might imagine Varian and Arthas having some sort of interaction with each other, considering that they've been childhood friends and all that, but that didn't really happen.
Never! I will never serve you!
Instead, we discover that Bolvar Fordragon is in the hands of the Lich King, he's being tormented, and there might still be a chance to quell the unrest between the Alliance and the Horde if they're able to save the Paladin. Both Muradin and Sourfang, they rush to their ships to take the upper citadel, and in the sky, they have a little fight with each other to decide who gets to save Bolvar and restore peace between the factions. Why not simply work together, you might ask? Very good question. Either way, one of the factions will shoot the other out of the sky, and before they can move further into the citadel, they must first face another victim of the Wrathgate.
Join me, Father. Join me, and we will crush this world in the name of the Scourge, for the glory of the Lich King.
Dranosh Sourfang now turned into a Death Knight, and I don't believe that they've ever confirmed which side of the story is the real event lore-wise, but for the sake of Varian's story, I'll go with the Alliance version.
A lone orc against the might of the Alliance? Charge!
Dwarves.
Muradin laughs at this lone orc that thinks that he can stand against the might of the Alliance, but Dranosh is unimpressed. It's up to us to bring peace to Varrok's son, and as we do, the father shows up to claim the body of his only son.
I am released.
That was Sourfang's boy, the Horde commander at the Wrathgate. Such a tragic end. What in the... There in the distance! Soldiers, fall in! Looks like the Horde are coming to take another shot! Don't force me hand, orc. We can't let you pass.
Behind you lies the body of my only son. Nothing will keep me from him.
I can't do it. Get back on your ship and we'll spare your life.
Stand down, Muradin. Let a grieving father pass.
No Ko kills Ilnok Atar. I will not forget this kindness. I thank you, Highness.
I was not at the Wrathgate, but the soldiers who survived told me much of what happened. Your son fought with honor. He died a hero's death. He deserves a hero's burial. Jaina, why are you crying?
It was nothing, Your Majesty. Just... I'm proud of my king.
Muradin, secure the deck and prepare our soldiers for an assault on the upper citadel. I'll send out another regiment from Stormwind.
Varian shows respect and honor to Varrok, an orc of the Horde who appreciates his kindness. Quite a drastic change from the Varian that we saw only a few patches back, wishing for the Horde to be taken by the Death God. Perhaps the words of Tyrion during the tournament had some influence on him. Perhaps Sourfang is such a badass that he can make even Varian change his mind. But this was one of the first signs of the road that they planned for Varian. He wouldn't show up for the rest of the expansion with the fight against the Lich King. That honor was for Tyrion forging. And at the end, with Arthas the Lich King defeated, Bolvar took the role as jailer of the damned. It's interesting when you compare the story of Garrosh and Varian with each other, whereas right now they're very similar in their mindset, right? But it would soon drift apart, with Garrosh diving even further into his desire for blood, and Varian actually doing the opposite. He would have to learn to live with both his Logar side and his King Varian side, take lessons from people like Jaina and his son Anduin. The road before him is still a long one, but this is where we'll end the story for today. Last week, we talked about Varian finally sitting down with the Horde of Faramir, which was interrupted by Garona half-Orcan. Tensions ran high between the factions, and would only flare up with events like the Wrathgate and the battle for the Undercity. Within Icecrown Citadel, Varian showed the first signs of figuring out that not all of the Horde were the monstrous murderers that he knew from his childhood, and the next part of his story arc is not that much shown in-game, but it plays out in the novels, so let's begin, shall we? First off, we have the novel Stormrage, which as the name implies is more about Malfurion Stormrage, but Varian did have his part to play. The Emerald Nightmare was spreading across the land of Azeroth, and both the Alliance and Horde had their victims, but this of course was not widely known at first. A mist was forming outside of Stormwind, and some of their people, including Anduin, they no longer woke up. Varian believed the Horde to be responsible for it. There was no proof, but to him it made perfect sense. There were far too many elements amongst the Horde that could not be trusted to keep the peace. The orcs aside, and they were also amongst those of whom Varian was suspicious, the king could not see any reason to believe in the honor of Blood Elves. These were high elves who had turned to absorbing demonic magic after the loss of their vaunted power source to Sunwell, and had subsequently become addicted to the fell energies. Nor did they have any faith in the undead Forsaken, who claimed to be free of the Lich King's mastery. Of all the Horde, the Tauren were the only ones who did not immediately make the Stormwind ruler want to reach for his weapon, but since they sided with the orcs, that made them untrustworthy as well. Of course, what Varian didn't know was that the Horde was suffering just as much from the Nightmare. Now, like I said, a lot of the story shifts away from Varian, and it focuses more on saving Malfurion from the Nightmare and taking the battle to Xavius. Eventually, Malfurion was saved from the grasp of the Nightmare, but there was still a war to win. The people of Azeroth were still trying to fight and defend their land against those who were taken by the Nightmare, and they now struck out against former friends and allies. Malfurion made contact with those still resisting, to stand together in the Emerald Dream to fight back against the Nightmare at its source. Varian heard Malfurion's voice in his mind, and at first he refused to lay down his arms and fall asleep. But one of his blows did not knock out the target, but instead killed the innocent sleepwalker. He snarled and told Malfurion that whatever he was planning to do, he should do it quick. Under the guidance of the Archdruid, Varian, and so many more from all factions and races, they entered the Emerald Dream. It was Varian who was chosen by Malfurion to lead them all, and of course, at first Varian wants nothing to do with it. The king looked outraged at the sight of the orcs. "I won't lead this filth. Let the Nightmare take them and be damned." "As it took your son, and so many others in Stormwind City," Malfurion said. "Only by defeating the Nightmare can you ever hope to have Anduin return to you, and that can only happen if we all work together." Varian visibly struggled between his hatred and his love, and he eventually loved one out. Now though, many of the Horde looked reluctant to join any force led by Varian, but then the Tauren leader Bane, he took up a place by the human. "I will trust that this one, chosen by a friend of my people, will act with honor towards all." The Tauren's declaration shattered resistance, and the forces of Azeroth under Varian's leadership, they moved out. The King of Stormwind raised his sword, what was actually part of his dream form, and he led his host forward. The Archdruid stared at Varian as the king moved on, and just for a moment, Varian's countenance had seemed to change to something else, to the image of a wolf. A name came to mind, an ancient spirit revered by many races, including the Night Elves. It was Gul'dan, Malfurion thought, recalling the legendary Ancients. The White Wolf had slaughtered hundreds of demons during the War of the Ancients, before falling to the great numbers. Yet his spirit was set to live on, watching over those he favored. "May you be one of those," the Archdruid concluded, aware they had likely imagined what he had seen. "May Gul'dan watch over you and all those marching to meet our enemy." And watch over them it did, yet the victory did not come easy. As the force of Azeroth battled with the might of the Nightmare, their physical bodies were still under attack, causing their dream form to die with their physical form. Images of their loved ones assaulted their minds and affected morale, but as the army tried to hold the Nightmare's attention, people like Malfurion, Thrall the Whisperwind, Brawl Bearmantle and Fura, they worked together on fighting the root of the corruption and the Nightmare Lord Xavius. The day was eventually saved. Malfurion returned to lead his people together with his beloved Tyrande, and as he restored the dream forms back to the body, he spared a brief moment to savor one's sight. That of the king rushing to his son, and the pair holding one another tight. The threat of the Nightmare was dealt with for the moment, and it wouldn't resurface until the expansion Legion. But of course, this is Warcraft, and peaceful times don't often last for long. Just before the Cataclysm, the people gathered within the Cathedral of Light to remember the thousands who had sacrificed their lives in the war against the Lich King. Varian and Anduin, they were present of course, but even Jaina Proudmoore had made her way to Stormwind. 2 Night Elf Sentinels stepped into the Cathedral to speak with King Varian. Despite the treaty between the Alliance and the Horde, there had been an attack in Ashenvale, and this was no ordinary skirmish. The attack had been brutal. The victims were hacked up in pieces. They were skinned. The Sentinels weren't sure if they were alive during that event, but their skins were hung up and written in elven blood were the symbols of the Horde. By now, you can probably imagine Varian's immediate response to this. His Logar side took hold, accusing Thrall of being behind this, and blaming Jaina for not letting him kill the orc when he had the chance. Jaina did her best to calm the King of Stormwind. She had fought besides the war chief, had been personally involved in the negotiations for the treaty. They had no proof that Thrall had actually ordered this attack, and it wasn't like he could be held responsible for the actions of every single orc. The Defiance Brotherhood were humans as well. Should Varian be held responsible for their actions? This blow struck him very hard, especially what he had lost to the Defiance Brotherhood. For a moment, she thought that she might have reached him, but then his brows drew together in a scowl that was made terrifying by the brutal scars across his face. He did not look like himself now. He looked like Lo'Gosh. What if you were wrong, Jaina? And what if I'm right? You've been known to be a poor judge of character in the past. Now it was Jaina's turn to freeze, stunned at the words. He was hurling Arthas back at her. That was how Lo'Gosh played, how he had won in gladiatorial combat. Dirty, using every tool at his disposal in order to win at all costs. Many of us knew Arthas well, Varian. Including you. You lived with him for years. You didn't see the monster he would become. Neither did his father nor Uther. No, I didn't. But I'm not making the same mistake again, and you are. Tell me, Jaina, if you had seen what Arthas would become, would you have tried to stop him? Would you have had the guts to kill your lover? Or would you have stood by, peace at all cost, a mewling little pacifist who...
Father.
The word, uttered in a buoying tenor voice, cracked like a whip. Varian whirled around, and Anduin stood in the doorway. His blue eyes were wide, and his face was drained of color. But there was more than an expression of shock in his face. There was bitter disappointment. Before Jaina's eyes, Varian changed. Gone was the coldly raging anger of Lo'Gosh. His posture shifted, and he was Varian again. Anduin was disgusted and disappointed at his father's reaction. Again, it's his son that's able to reach the king, as he spent some time with the Sentinels in a much calmer mindset, and he makes the decision to investigate this further, and if Thrall is truly behind this, then he will march into Orgrimmar himself. Jaina promised that if the War Chief of the Horde was truly behind this, she would be marching at his side, and Varian apologized for his behavior, and he realizes that Anduin yearns for peace, or it seems like he simply yearns for war. He wants his father back, not Lo'Gosh, and although the king had merged into one single being again, the transition of finding balance within himself, that was still going on. The king doesn't like having his boy around with him, while he's still trying to determine where the king ends and the Lo'Gosh side of him begins, so they decide to give Anduin a Hearthstone, which he can use to visit Jaina at Vermor at any time he wants. Varian also understands that his son isn't weak. In some cases, he has shown more strength and wisdom than most adults around him, but he does believe that Anduin is a little bit soft, and that some training with the dwarves that it could be very good for his son. He suggests that the prince should visit Magni in Ironforge, and Anduin really warms up to the idea. He could check out the Explorers League, he could stretch his legs outside of Stormwind, and Varian would make sure to talk to Magni and encourage Anduin's training. The prince had already shown great talent with throwing daggers and the bow, but his fighting skills were simply not there, not even after the dwarves got their hands on him. He did have an interest and affinity to the light, as he meets up with High Priest Rohan, and he dreams of a world where every city would welcome whoever stood at the gates with open arms and kindness. Anduin truly yearned for a world of peace, yet the world of Azeroth itself, it was in turmoil. This was at the brink of the Cataclysm. The Black Dragon aspect Deathwing, he was about to break out and try to bring about the Hour of Twilight, and this did not come without a warning. Earthquakes were already taking place, some had been crushed beneath their own homes, and Magni Bronsbeard decided to use an ancient timed ritual to communicate with the land and figure out what exactly was going on. Instead of just communicating though, he literally became one with the land as his body was turned into a crystal. Anduin, his father, and all those aware, they grieved for this heavy loss, and Varian insisted for Anduin to stay within Ironforge during this time. This was a chance to actually help the people. He had made some good friends there, and the fact that the Prince of Stormwind is staying there throughout this difficult period, that would send a strong signal about how highly they regarded the dwarves. It wasn't a pleasant place to be at right now, but not everything you do as a king will be pleasant either, and Anduin knew that his father was right, and he did want to help, but the place would become a lot more unpleasant as Magni's daughter Moira, she and the Dark Iron Dwarves showed up. Moira Bronsbeard, she'd been kidnapped by the Dark Iron Dwarves years before this, and although her father believed that foul magic was at play, Moira actually fell in love with Emperor Fauruzan, leader of the Dark Iron Dwarves. He showed her kindness and affection and the respect that she never received from her father, simply for being born as a woman. They eventually married, they had a child together, and now she had shown up to take her rightful place as heir to the throne. With the strength of her Dark Iron Dwarves, she placed Ironforge under lockdown, she held Anduin as a hostage, and although the way that she went about it was absolutely wrong, technically she was in the right, as she was the one to succeed her father.
You stand before Moira. Watch your tongue.
Now remember that Hearthstone that Jaina had given to Anduin to visit her at Vermor? That one was very handy right now, as the prince could use it to escape the city and escape Moira's grasp. The timing could have been better though, since just as he showed up, Jaina was in a secret meeting with Bane. The Horde was dealing with its own inner turmoil, since Thrall had left the Outlands to figure out what was going on with the world. He had left Garrosh behind as war chief. Garen had then challenged Garrosh to Mak'gora, since he believed that the new war chief had ordered an attack on a peaceful meeting with druids. But again, like the attack on the Night Elves, this was not by the Horde, but by the Twilight's Hammer clan. Garrosh's weapon Gorhal was poisoned by Megafa Grimtotem, which led to the Old Bull's death, and Bane losing Thunderbluff to Megafa. He had shown up for aid at Faramore, since he didn't know who exactly he could trust within the Horde, and Anduin had now accidentally barged into their meeting. Now apologies for not going into full details with all these storylines, but this video is about Varian, so I have to do my best to keep it focused on him. Anyways, Jaina then used her magic to contact Varian, who's of course very relieved to hear that his son is safe. The prince then informs his father about what happened within Ironforge, that her claim to the throne was legitimate, but that the way she went about it, she didn't have to do it like this. No, she doesn't, the king replied, as he asked Jaina to keep Anduin at Faramore for a little bit longer, while they would publicly pretend to be as baffled as Moira would want them to be. They'll let Moira believe that she succeeded in hiding her coup, while Varian has a plan. He gathered members of the SI7 to infiltrate Ironforge. They went through the shutdown deep run tram and forcefully removed Moira from her stolen throne. When eventually Anduin finds out about this from his auntie Jaina, he tells her that she must send him to Ironforge, and of course the maid refuses at first. This 13-year-old heir to Stormwind should not be sent in the middle of danger. Listen to me, Jaina. Please. If father carried out this attack, a lot of people are going to die, and succession will be thrown into confusion. Instead of coming together as a people, the dwarves are going to find themselves in the midst of another civil war. I've got to try and stop him, don't you see? I need to make him understand that there is another way. Anduin's words are eventually able to convince her that his destiny is to rule Stormwind one day, and that he can't face that destiny if they keep on treating him like a child. A quick portal later, and Anduin found himself within Ironforge just in time to stop his father from making a very big mistake. He had dragged Moira out of her bed into the open area near the forge, where crowds were already starting to gather. He hauled her to him roughly with one arm. His other hand was at her throat, pressing the sword against the pale flesh. "Behold the usurper," Varian cried, his identity no longer a secret, his voice echoing in the vast space. "This is the child Magni Bronzebeard wept countless tears over. His beloved little girl. How sickened he would be to see what she's done to his city, to his people." The gathered crowd stared. Even the Dark Irons did not dare to make a move, not with their empress in such immediate jeopardy. "This throne is not yours. You bought it with deceit and lies and trickery. You have threatened your own subjects when they have done nothing wrong, and bullied your way to a title you have not yet earned. I will not see you sit upon this stolen throne for one moment longer."
Father.
The voice cut through the haze of Varian's rage, and just for an instant, the blade that he held to Moira's throat wavered. Then he recovered. He did not take his eyes from the dwarf as he replied, "You shouldn't be here, Anduin. Get out! This is no place for you." The prince, once more, was the voice of reason, shared wisdom and truth with his father. Despite what he might want, Moira was the rightful heir. His father was not some vigilante. Destruction was easy, but creating something good, something right, something that lasts, that was the hard part. Varian wanted nothing more than to make the usurper pay for what she had done to his boy, his beautiful son. It was hard to not simply bellow in anger and plunge the blade into the usurper's neck. To know that the threat to his son was forever ended. He could do it. He could do all that and how he wanted to. The low gush side of him was roaring fiercely. It would be easy to kill her, but they had to think of what was best for the people of Ironforge. In the end, his son was able to calm the wolf down, and Varian decided that he did want to do what was good, what was actually right. She had shown that she was incapable of ruling Ironforge by herself, so he came with the plan of letting all clans be represented by a leader. They formed the Council of Three Hammers, with the Dark Iron, the Bronzebeard, and the Wildhammer clans, each of them having a voice in the city. Just like himself, she had to do better than she was right now, and the dwarves around them, they started to cheer. His son was smiling and nodding with pride. "See, father?" Anduin said, pulling back to look up at him. "You knew exactly the right thing to do. I knew you did." Varian smiled. "I needed someone to believe that for me, before I could do it myself," he replied. "Come on, son. Let's go home." So far, Anduin has been the stabilizing force for Varian, but you can tell that there's an imbalance within the king. Onyxia's magic separated and reformed him, and the process did not come without complications. Varian is struggling, and so was the world of Azeroth itself as the cataclysm finally took place. Deathwing made a return, the walls around Gilneas crumbled, to which the Gilneans joined the Night Elves and underwent a ritual to regain control of the Worgen curse, while War Chief Garrosh decided it was time to take charge of the Horde and lead it to a better future by conquering the land. War was upon them, while Thrall the Whisperwind had a vision granted by a loon, one that showed her that Varian was Gul'dan's chosen and that he would stand a battle against the orcs. She and her husband knew that the Alliance would need a leader in the wake of the Cataclysm, and with this vision it seemed like Varian was meant to be that leader. The people of Gilneas, led by Gen Greymane, the same Greymane that once upon a time had joined the Alliance of Lordaeron and had complained about the gold that they were spending on Edelgard Keep, they wanted to rejoin the Alliance and add the Worgen strength and ferocity to their cause. A summit at Darnassus took place, in which all the factions of the Alliance were represented, and they not only wanted to decide on whether or not they should accept the Gilneans, but they also wanted to see if anyone would arise to guide the Alliance. Now you might ask yourself, why did the Gilneans need to be accepted again, if they were actually part of the Alliance of Lordaeron? Well, that's because sometime after the Second War, Greymane decided to build a big wall around his city, separating Gilneas from Lordaeron. He didn't make Lordaeron actually pay for the wall, but no one was allowed to enter Gilneas, not even when the human refugees begged to be allowed in, during the time where the Scourge ran rampant across the lands of Lordaeron. They had turned their back on the Alliance, they got hit by the Worgen curse, they lost their lands, and now they dared to ask for support for an alliance from those that they had refused to help. I have made some terrible decisions years ago, Greymane said. I abandoned the Alliance for what I thought was the right course for my people. That proved to be a sorry mistake. What I'm saying is that I thank you all for giving us this second chance. The King of Gilneas definitely regrets his actions, and he hopes to make the Alliance see that the Worgen ferocity and their fury, that they can be an asset to them, that the mistakes of the past will not be repeated. And at first, it actually seems like most members of the Alliance that they're warming up to the idea of letting them into the Alliance. That is, until Varian Wrynn stood up and spoke his mind. He still remembered what Gilneas had done. It was true that Stormwind had not directly participated in the Third War, but it had been a strong supporter of the Alliance. Stormwind had also been going through much more turmoil at that time, and Varian had been in the heart of most of that turmoil. King Varian silently stood. The effect was immediate. The shouting around them died. The two Night Elves again they stared at Varian, whose face revealed nothing of his intentions. Members of the Alliance, my good Night Elf host, I like to speak. Even Prince Anduin appeared uncertain as to what his father planned, although he did not seem worried, only curious. Everyone knows that there's no love-lust between Stormwind and Gilneas. Everyone knows why. Utter quiet fell upon the assembly. Gen's expression was unreadable as he waited for Varian to go on, but his ears lay flat in concern. The benefit that an ally such as Gilneas offers us, it's obvious. While our skills in combat more than match those of the orcs and their allies, there's always been a hunger that the Horde has thrived upon that we, so civilized, no longer seem to have. The Worgen offer us that righteous hunger to overcome all obstacles in battle, to keep the Alliance from being splintered, or merely sitting back as the orcs take one land after another. Gen's eyes widened, and even Malfurion could not help but feel his hopes stirred at such a speech. I consider damned long and hard on this, I promise you, Varian told all. Such an ally can help us easily hold the Horde's ambitions at bay, maybe even push them back. The king indicated Gen and the Gilneans. An ally of such honor, of such courage, I'd be more than pleased to fight beside. His words brought cheer. Even the Worgen could no longer restrain themselves, several of the younger ones giving out short howls. Varian now turned his attention to Malfurion. Archdruid, you called before for a vote by acclamation, a vote that I interrupted. My apologies for letting that happen. I'd meant to ask to speak sooner. Smiling, Malfurion answered. I would be happy to call for it again, King Varian. That won't be necessary. The human monarch's expression went through a stunning transformation. A dark cause spread over it as Varian eyed Gen Greymane. Varian spat in the Gilnean's direction. Calling for it again would be a waste of time. The Lord of Stormwind snarled at his counterpart below. For I'd never give consent to allow these mongrels into the Alliance. Shouts of consternation erupted, especially amongst the Worgen. The one of us, Edric, took a step toward Varian, but Gen grabbed the young warrior's shoulders and pulled him back. The two Worgen bared their teeth at one another, Edric quickly becoming cowed. Honor and trust, these are what the Alliance needs, not these beasts that even when they parade as men, were lacking in both. What happens if they choose to cut themselves off once more? Will they even bother to give us a warning? Can we trust them even to do that? Varian snapped his fingers, and his retinue joined him on their feet, Anduin the last and most hesitant. As I've already said to many, I find nothing worthy, nothing honorable in this pack of hounds. And so, I will never vote aye to their admission back into the fold. And with that, Varian led Stormwind out of the summit, as chaos erupted amongst the other representatives, and Malfurion's storm rage watched all of his hopes crumble before his eyes. As you can tell, Varian isn't too happy with the Gilneans, and the summit seems to be a bust. But the Loon's vision has shown them that Varian was the one, and Malfurion was not about to give up. He went over to talk with the King of Stormwind, who refused to listen to his words, and his son Anduin overheard everything that they said. He realized that if a 10,000-year-old elf can't convince his father to see reason, to stop living in the past and think about the greater good of the people, then surely he himself had no chance of succeeding. He has made up his mind and decides to join Prophet Velen and the Draenei for a while to learn more about the light, something that he had a great affinity towards, something which he had spoken about with Velen. The boy turned to leave. Something snapped inside of Varian. He saw his beloved Tiffin again, with their infant son snuggled in her arms. Tiffin then faded away, leaving only the child, and then the child began to fade. Varian could not let that happen. Without thinking, he lunged forward, snaring Anduin's arm. The prince let out a cry. Some of the overwhelming fear faded, and Varian realized that he was crushing Anduin's arm. The king released his grip. Anduin, his face filled with shock, grasped at his injured arm. He knew as well as his father that Varian could not only strangle a foe with one hand, but had done so several times. Few men there were who could match the strength of the legendary Logash, and now in a fit of utter madness, he had used the same might, however briefly, against his defiant son. Despite his desperate attempts, this act only pushed Anduin further away, and he left his father to join up with Velen, while Varian took to drinking away his sorrows. Reports had come in about Garrosh and the Horde attacking within Ashenvale, but to Varian, all of that seemed to matter little. He had lost the one thing that meant the world to him. The rage and fury that had kept him alive in the arena, it seemed to destroy everything worth living, and a solution had to be found. It was Malfurion who suggested the king to, rather than staying here and drinking even further, that he should join him for a hunt. This actually interested Varian, something to focus his full attention on, and as luck would have it, the appointed hunting grounds by Malfurion, they were also the hunting grounds of the Worgen. Greymane and Varian, they ran into each other, and they ended up in a contest as to who was the better hunter. Varian wanted to win and embarrass Gen in front of his own people. The Gilnean would see that their vaunted leader, that he was still a failure who would only bring them further to ruin. The idea that by shaming Gen, Varian wanted to lessen his own sense of failure, it had crept into the Lord of Stormwind's mind, but he had quickly and soundly buried that thought deep. They were tracking down a boar, which led them right in front of a big bear, ready to maul them to pieces. And nothing in this world bonds people better together than fighting for their lives. Together, the King of Stormwind and the King of Gilneas, they were able to bring this mighty beast down. A quick killing blow, Varian complimented again. I simply finished your work. The Gilnean ruler returned. This kill is yours. The hunt is yours. Varian shook his head. Hardly. I was hunting a boar. A man who hunts a rabbit and brings down a deer is applauded. A man who hunts a boar and brings down a bear, he should be acclaimed. And with that, Gen looked to the sky and unleashed a powerful howl. A howl that honored both the kill and the one who made it. His call was taken up by the other Worgen, all saluting the skills of the King of Stormwind. Gen finally finished. The howls of his followers ended with his. He faced his counterpart again, only Varian was no longer there. Varian did not believe that he deserved the honor they were giving him, so it left him to think, to reconsider his past assumptions about the Gilneans, for his love for his son, his people, and for his hopes for redemption. There were others that were struggling hard with a darker side of their nature, perhaps even in a way that he himself never had, and therefore he needed the help of Greymane. Gen was confused at first. They had no lands or gold to offer. Varian had everything, but he did not have everything. The Worgen had learned to deal with their ferocity. They had learned to control their Worgen side, and Varian needed help with controlling his. Gen not only nodded in understanding, but he even showed some sympathy rather than disdain. I always wondered how anyone could survive what you did and stay intact inside. I didn't. And so, Gen led Varian to the ritual site, where so many wargers had gone before, and he would be the one to guide Varian into the ritual. First, he had to eat a moonleaf, a symbol of both nature and the Mother Moon. This would help prepare his mind for the ritual. Next, he drank from 3 wells. One of them was tranquility, which would rekindle the peace and joy lost so early in his life. One was of balance, which would keep his mind and body as one, thus enabling him to stand with both parts unified for the struggle that he was going to take on. Then there was fury, which would enhance the first 2 mugs he took, and also build within the strength needed to confront and hopefully command that which most risked the ritual ending in failure. They sat down together, as Varian plunged himself in his memories, those points most relevant to his life, and the choices he made because of them, for good or for ill. In the first vision, he was a child again, learning to ride his first horse from his father, and being encouraged courage during his training. Varian realized then that he had handled the blade barely better than his own son, but Lane's encouragement, it had helped Varian better to learn from his instructors. The tranquility of those days, it softened Varian's heart. That was when the assassin Garona half-orc struck and Lane fell dead on the floor. The capital Stormwind was taken over by the orcs and everything wonderful about his childhood vanished. No peace, no tranquility. But unlike in times past, Varian now realized that the good memories, they had always remained with him. Even though violence had taken his childhood, it could not erase what he had lived prior, not unless Varian allowed it to do so, and that was what he had always done. But not this time. Despite what had happened to his father and to Stormwind, Varian at last embraced what had been before. His father had never ceased loving him and had proven that time and time again. He would always have his childhood. The past could not be changed, but that meant for the good as well as the ill. Tranquility. The next memory was that of his beloved wife Tiffin, who was calm and a wondrous golden spirit, contrasting sharply with his wild dark self. Varian loved her for the first time again as she strode toward him, even though the first thing he did when she spoke with him was to brush her off in such an arrogant manner that any other person would have rightly fled. But Tiffin did not. Again, she danced with him, laughed with him, and brought out the good in Varian, the balance, the unchecked. In some ways, even more than his father, Tiffin had helped Varian to become the king that the people loved. And yet, the people were the very ones who had killed her. She lay dead at his feet, slain during a riot, an innocent victim of a time when everything had gone mad. Reliving it, Varian nearly slipped back into his darkness, but that had been the ultimate disdain for his beloved. Tiffin had made of him a better man, a worthy leader. Varian finally saw that he had constantly insulted her memory with his actions. Tiffin would never have acted as he had. She had always forgiven, always sought to do her best for those that she loved. If Varian hoped to redeem himself to her memory, he would have to do the same. He steeled himself against the images of her death, doing instead what he knew that she would have hoped for him. He was right to grieve, but he also had to move on and learn. Most of all, he should continue to learn from her life, use it as an example of how he should confront all the issues that he continued to face, not only as a father, but as a man and a monarch. Balance. The final vision was that of their beloved child Anduin. He was all that he had left of family, the most precious member of all, for in the boy was his mother. It had been difficult to be the father that Lane had been, especially without Tiffin, but he recalled some times when he and Anduin had laughed together. He also recalled the fear he had of losing him, of people harming him, the fear that drove him to rage, which in turn made the king the very thing that he had tried to protect his son against. He again saw himself grabbing Anduin's arm and was suddenly reminded how that rage and that fear fueling it had sent Anduin away. With that realization, he now turned on his own rage. It could be a powerful, devastating force, a powerful tool in battle, but it was also a double-edged sword. One that had to be kept under control, and so Varian held tight to his rage, as if it were a horse needed to be broken, and he worked on mastering it. It would no longer aid in furthering ruining his life, it would have a purpose. Varian knew only one purpose too. If battle was the single place where his rage did him any good, then it would be where he would channel that force. He would let it fuel his strength against the Dragon Deathwing and the orcs and their allies. The rage finally surrendered to his will. He had broken his hold over him, and now it would serve Varian, not the other way around. Tranquility, balance, fury. What had started when two became one again has now been finished, as Varian took control of his inner demons and he became the true champion of Low-Kush, of Gul'dan. He literally became empowered by a demigod, and he and the Worgen, they focused their powers on Garrosh and the Horde, who at this time, they were trying to take over Ashenvale. The Worgen's timely arrival and added strength, combined with Varian's leadership, it turned the tide of battle, while Garrosh and Varian, they got a chance to resume the fight they had started within the Violet Hold. This time, the orc had Gorhal to match the legendary Charlemagne. But Varian had a very powerful buff. He had the power of Gul'dan. It's possible that the King of Stormwind might have won their duel, but we would never find out as their battle was interrupted and Garrosh's Kor'kron, they dragged the warchief away. It was clear that they had lost this battle here, but one battle did not make a war. Garrosh envisioned again the realm that he would build, and in envisioning it, once more knew that it would happen. He led them off, already making plans in his mind. This was not over, not until he had won, and not until Varian Wrynn was dead. That encounter would have to wait though, as the day was won and the Alliance they reconvened to vote on the fate of Gilneans and their acceptance within the Alliance. This time, all voices, including that of Varian's, they voted aye, to which the Worgen howled of pleasure. Varian also apologized for his unreasoning, unfocused rage that had brought calamity on him and all that he held dear, and only served to divide the Alliance, stating that Varian Wrynn, who reigned with such rage, was now dead. But in dying, he had learned that it wasn't the rage that was at fault. Only he. The fury, the anger must have a purpose. It must be the righteous anger of one defending his family, his home and his friends. It must be the kind of fury that keeps all the loved ones safe from those who would rip them away, be it Deathwing, be it the Horde, or whatever might try to stand against the Alliance. The faction's leaders cheered. Thrall and Malfurion, they watched as the vision granted by Elune had come true. Logash, Varian Wrynn, champion of Gul'dan, was already speaking to the other leaders as to what they should do in terms of Ashenvale and beyond. Never again would he be able to turn from his allies for the mistakes they had made, not when Varian could at last see how theirs were so insignificant compared to his. "I'll do what I can," he whispered. "I swear I will, Anduin." The prince had already sent a letter to his father, telling him that he wanted to assure him that when he completed his own path with the light, that he would return to Stormwind. Varian wondered if Malfurion or Thrall were responsible for this, but they had nothing to do with it. This happy news was from Anduin all by himself, and on Remembrance Day, a yearly holiday in which the Alliance honors the great heroes of the past, Anduin finally returned home. There was still a rift between father and son. Varian still had doubts about Anduin being ready to lead the kingdom. At his age, he had already mastered the sword and was ready to meet Alliance enemies in the battlefield, while Anduin was still on the quest of finding out who he really was and what his place was within the circle. This rift would need healing, and it was Archbishop Benedictus who had a gift for both the king and the prince. He invited the king to meet him at Tiffin's memorial, while he brought Anduin himself, not mentioning that his father would actually be there. The gift was finishing a quest given to him long ago by Varian, finding the key to Tiffin's locket. Varian felt something moving deep within him. "Thank you, Benedictus. You're a good man. I hesitate to think what I'd do without you." The Archbishop bowed his head. "Please, allow me to leave you to it." He turned to go, and as he did, he waved his arm once more. "Peace be with you both," he said, and he disappeared down the path into a grove of trees. Varian stood there, turning the silver key over and over, wondering about the Archbishop's strange farewell. Finally, he noticed that Anduin was watching him. All the harsh things he wanted to say to his son, they were of no consequence now. He realized only one thing was true. Anduin was more important than all of it. It was so clear. The king gave both the locket and the key to his son. They remembered Tiffin, dearly beloved wife and sorely missed mother. The unspoken words finally came out of them. Varian had been blind in seeing the man that Anduin was becoming, while Anduin spoke the words he had always wanted to say. He wished so much that he was more like his father. He wants to be a great king, but he's not as strong. He wiped his tears angrily, as if they were a sign of weakness. Varian put his arm around his son. "No, Anduin. You have more courage than I do, and it flows from a place deep within your heart. Remember what your Uncle Magni used to say? Strength comes in many forms." They both repeated the last part of the line in unison. Both small and large. Varian and son are each on their own journey of becoming more than they were, and in this moment they healed the rift that had grown between them. Varian wished that the moment could last forever, but he knew that it could not. Looking up, he scanned his surroundings. "So, tell me, from what direction do you think the ambush will come?" Those that have played during the Cataclysm, you might remember fighting Archbishop Benedictus in the Hour of Twilight dungeon. With the coming of Deathwing, he had looked into the eyes of the dragon, and he had despaired. He turned away from the church and joined the Twilight's Hammer cult, which had now shown up to close the trap around Anduin and Varian. The prince and the king would not go down without a fight though. Logash did everything in his power to defend his son, while Anduin shot arrow after arrow, aiding his father in taking out the assassins. However, there was a summoner in the back, putting all his efforts in creating a portal. Something big was summoned into Stormwind, and despite their best efforts, they were unable to stop him in time. Before them was the biggest Draconid they had ever seen. The enormous half-dragon, half-man monster was adorned from head to tail in colossal purple armor, bearing the marks of the Twilight's Hammer cult, its thick plates burning with protection spells. Father and son, with their backs against the wall, they tried to bring the beast down, but he was simply too much. Anduin fired the last of his arrows into the beast, but they were like gnats on a knoll. He could only watch in anguish as his father tried in vain to deflect the enormous power of the monster, trying to keep his son safe from the axe whistling down with savage glee. Varian felt the burning bite of the blade slice through his armor and then continued deep into his ribcage. The violent impact slammed the king to the ground, but his eyes never left Anduin as he sought to make sure that his child was free from harm. Their gazes met, and Varian's eyes softened with relief that his son was unhurt, but as the dust settled, Anduin's own stare grew wide with horror at what he saw. Varian lay sprawled and twisted, with the Draconid's axe buried deep in his chest. Anduin let out a wail of anguish as the moment stretched out like an eternity. Varian looked deep into his son's eyes and let him know that everything was alright. This is how it always ends with Wrynn kings. The Draconid stood over Varian and laughed as the Broken King coughed and pleaded with his stare for Anduin to do him one last favor. Run, Varian whispered as a cool and gentle blackness slowly enveloped him. Let me be the last to pay this price. The creature sneered down at the king, pulling the axe out of Varian's chest. It was a strangely numb tug. There was no more pain, no more sadness. Varian knew that he would die as he had lived. The creature raised a wet blade overhead, its notched and bloody surface glistening in the setting sun. How peaceful it is here, Tiffin. But Anduin wasn't about to leave his father's side. With arms wide to the sky, a golden nova of holy energy forced the monster to retreat as the prince advanced, strong and fearless, like a king. As Anduin shouted the word "Barrier," the graveyard seemed to blur and shimmer around the king and the prince. His affinity to the light, his faith, was his only weapon right now, and it was powerful enough to keep the creature away. As the draconic charged, the boy stood firm, surrounded by an aura of holy light. He opened his palms to the sky and spoke the words to dispel magic. With each word, the earth resonated with energy, shaking the gravestones and sending a ripple across the surface of the lake. A flash of fire exploded from the sky and hit the Draconic as he rushed in. The inferno blinded the beast, and he stumbled toward the serene silhouette of Anduin, the hideous creature screaming in both pain and rage. As the Draconic fell, his armor quickly faded to a dull grey, no longer protected by dark magics. At the last possible moment, it was Varian who lunged forwards with everything that he had left in his body, and he struck the beast down. Somewhere in his mind, Varian could hear a scream that was half a battle cry, half agony, but he wasn't sure if it had come from him or the creature. Then, everything went black. Somewhere far away, Varian felt Anduin was there. He opened his eyes to see his son holding him, the boy's tears mixing with the king's pooling blood. "I am so sorry, father." Anduin managed through his tears. Varian opened his eyes again and tried to smile. "No, it is I who am sorry, for not seeing earlier what you are, what you've always been. I am so proud that you are my son." Varian reached up with his bloody hand to touch the boy's smeared cheek. "Do not mourn for me, Anduin. This has always been my fate. Do not let it be yours." "No, this is not how it ends," he shook the king. "Do you hear me, father? A Wrynn prince will not again watch the loved one die before him. This is not our fate." Anduin screamed into the sky, and the clouds seemed to part in sympathy. The prince closed his eyes and slowly began to chant. At first, it was a soft and gentle sound, but as his voice rose in crescendo, it became a beautiful and powerful song. As the words came, his hands began to glow with light. Faint at first, then brighter and brighter, until it was competing even with the setting sun, bathing the entire cemetery in shadowless light of midday. The song reached a fever pitch, and the young priest lifted his eyes and voice to the heavens, calling to the very heart of the cosmos for a source of divine power. Suddenly, liquid rays brighter than 1,000 suns burst from Anduin's fingertips, penetrating the king's body and painting everything in a brilliant yellow glow. Varian's entire being was rocked by an influx of pure light, and at the center of it all was Anduin, holding his father close, while a vortex of infinite beauty danced between them. Then, in sharp contrast to the intense swirling energy billowing all around, the prince began to speak with a melodious and gentle voice as he carefully laid his hands on the immobile king's forehead and quietly, peacefully began to pray. Now there's a bit of a discussion as to what exactly happened here. Some say that this is describing a massive healing spell or something like lay on hands, but I personally like to think that this is one of the few canon moments in which resurrection was actually used in the story. Anduin bringing his father back from the dead, breaking the tradition of the Wrynn child having to see the father die. Father and son went side by side through the Cataclysm, but Varian himself didn't have a massive role to play as the story that focused more on Thrall and taking on Deathwing. Meanwhile, War Chief Garrosh was ready to carve out the world that he envisioned, with his next target being Theramore. He summoned his Horde troops to lay siege upon Proudmoore City, to which bane he sent Petter Stormhoof to warn Jaina about the coming attack. He would not forsake his duties to the Horde, but he could also not live with himself if he didn't give it a fair warning, since she had been an ally in the past and had tried to do her best to form some sort of peace between the Alliance and the Horde. This didn't matter to Garrosh though. In fact, it actually helped him out, since his plan was to let Jaina get as many troops of the Alliance in as she could, which he could wipe out with one single strike. They'd stolen the focusing iris from the blue dragonflight and had the Blood Elves turn it into a mana bomb. Naturally, Varian and the Alliance, they sent in troops to support, even the Kirintor offered her aid, and Faramore was hit hard from both outside and within.
We're gonna turn this place into a sinkhole!
Jaina Proudmoore saw her city and loved ones get destroyed by Garrosh and the Horde. The mage Ronin pushed her through a portal as he drew the bomb onto himself and into their magical wards to minimize the explosion. The one who had sacrificed so much to bring the Alliance and Horde closer together, she now saw all that she believed in swept away in the tides of war.
No one can protect you. Kill the Proudmoore wench and bring me that bomb!
Your people are despicable cowards, Orc! You're nothing more than rabid dogs, and you will be put down!
Brave words, mage. I'll spit in your face when you beg for mercy.
You spit on mercy? Then you will have none! You want carnage? Garrosh will get more blood than he ever bargained for!
Faramore was nothing but a crater, and the one peaceful Jaina, she's now out for blood. She picked up the focusing iris and she made her way to Stormwind to ask Varian for aid. By now, you could probably guess Varian's reaction. He told Jaina to calm down and not do anything rash. Wait, what? Varian Wrynn doesn't immediately call out for the orcs their heads? That's right, the High King of the Alliance, he's learned much in his time, and now the roles are reversed. Now it's Varian trying to make Jaina see reason. They will strike back at the Horde, but if they're going into World War, then they'll have to do it wisely. They've got to rebuild the fleet, they lost good people at Faramore, which will take time to call back others from their post to fill their positions. The Horde has set up blockades around the entire continent, and they have to do this right, or else they'll just be throwing more lives away. I don't know what happened to you, Varian Wrynn, but you've turned into a coward. And you, Anduin, I'm sorry for my part in keeping you a gullible child. There's no hope for peace. There's no time for strategy. I have their ruination in my grasp. You're a fool for not seizing the chance. They spoke her name at once, father and son, so different but so oddly similar in how they stepped forward imploringly. She turned her back on both of them. Varian and Anduin talked long into the evening. The man who had once identified with Jaina's new attitude and the boy who quailed from it talked about what grief and loss could do to someone, talked about what war and violence as well could do. Even Anduin could see that they had to attack the Horde. They had shown them what they were willing to do, and they must prevent them from harming more innocent people, but they didn't have to do it with hate in their hearts. The king swelled with pride at his son's words. He had not expected such acceptance, reluctant though it was from Anduin. He was honestly surprised that he himself hadn't shared Jaina's feelings, and realized how far he had come from the man he had once been. He had made great progress, and perhaps one day would even be as wise as his son. For now though, the Alliance prepared their fleet, and Anduin, he had requested to stay within Stormwind until the fleet had sailed. After which, he would return to his studies with the Draenei. In the meantime, Jaina went on with her own plans, using the focusing iris to strike Orgrimmar hard and fast. They would no doubt be celebrating their victory, all gathered in one place, leaving them open for a tidal wave that Jaina was planning to release on all those inside. The men, women and children, all of Orgrimmar would die. She spent her days gathering the elemental force of water, who screamed out in protest. World Shaman Thrall, he heard them calling out to him, and together with the Blue Dragon Caligos, he was able to make Jaina see reason that this was not the way. Garrosh is a thief, and a coward, and a butcher, but she was doing precisely what he had, right down to using the same artifacts and had obliterated Faramore. This is not truly what she wished to do. She didn't want to become a Garrosh or even an Arthas, and their words were able to change her mind. She would not use this tidal wave that she'd created to wipe out Orgrimmar. Instead, she would use it to defend her people, since in the meantime, Varian and the Alliance fleet, they'd also made their way to Orgrimmar, and despite all their clever planning, Garrosh had his own tricks to use against them. He had his shaman raise Kraken from the deep, Kraken with huge tentacles that whipped about vessels, closing around it in a parody of a loving embrace. The war chief did not just send creatures of the deep to do his fighting, he too, Gorha in hand, jumped into the fight. For the third time, Varian and Garrosh clashed their weapons, and 3 times too many for Garrosh's taste. This time, he would finish the job, kill Varian and all that he loved. He would march onto Stormwind, take his precious boy, slap him into chains, and parade him through Orgrimmar. He had fought to anger the king of Stormwind, that the human would explode in fury, fighting wildly instead of well. To his astonishment, Varian merely grinned, dodging the swing of the axe, measuring his next step. Anduin might surprise you. he said. Even lovers of peace despise cowards. Their battle was once again interrupted, this time by a Kraken, and Varian saw that despite the Horde fleet being vastly outnumbered, Garrosh's tactics of using the Kraken, it was doing insane amounts of damage to the fleet. They would have probably lost the whole fleet, was it not for Jaina riding on Caligos' back and sending her water elementals to save the fleet. She had not expected them to be there. She thought that they would focus on breaking the blockade at Darkshore or Feathermoon strongholds. If she had truly sent out her tidal wave, then she would have destroyed both Orgrimmar and the whole Alliance fleet. Luckily, that didn't happen, and Jaina was able to turn the tide of battle. She and the Alliance were able to defeat the Horde and reclaim Northwatch Hold. Jaina would move on to take up position as leader of the Kinator. She would replace Ronin, while Varian returned home to his city to rebuild their fleets and plan out the war. Garrosh was forced to call for the full retreat, bring his ships home from their blockades and lick his wounds. He could not believe that this had happened, but he wasn't ready to give up either, quite the opposite. He would simply escalate this war. It was no longer about just claiming Kalimdor. He wanted to see the Alliance wiped out and Wrynn dead at his feet. A war not for control of a single continent, but for the conquest of this very world. A war that would find its way into previously hidden lands, as Anduin's ship, presumably on its way to bring it back to the Draenei, it finds itself under fire and shipwrecks on the land of Pandaria.
We've made a thorough inspection of the wreckage, Your Majesty. There is no sign of Admiral Taylor or his ship.
200 ships at my disposal, yet the one carrying my son goes missing. What of their last message? Show me whatever you have.
We have been drawn off course. Horde air fleet. Many casualties. Shipwrecked on an uncharted isle. But the White Pawn is accounted for. Repeat, the White Pawn is safe.
Anduin.
Surprise attack! Requesting immediate, if anyone's received.
Sir, the 7th Fleet has already been dispatched, but it could take weeks before it—
There's no time to waste. We'll send a small elite force to secure this new land and bring back my son.
An elite force, amongst them members of the SI7 and the players, including the Pandaren from the Wandering Isle, who've been recently accepted into the Alliance after kicking the crap out of Varian. They're sent out to recover Prince Anduin, while the rest of the fleet, they take a little bit longer to get there. Garrosh is informed about this new land, and he also sends his Horde forces in, but not to recover Anduin. Instead, he wants...
Redirect the invasion fleet! General, you and your best veterans will pave our way. Storm the shore, and paint this new continent red!
The war between the Alliance and Horde has made its way to Pandaria, and this is probably the worst place to fight it out, since the land is infected with a dark force known as the Sha. Our negative emotions, they empower the Sha, causing massive devastation to the land and all kinds of problems for the people of Pandaria. The Alliance does eventually track down Anduin, while also cleaning up the mess that we made, and 2 months later, Garrosh and his Horde forces, as well as Varian and the fleet, they finally arrive in Pandaria. The king asked for the adventurers to help him with setting up the Alliance base and learning the ways of the land. With that came a little lesson in patience for both the king and Thrall the Whisperwind.
We have them cornered inside the temple. We should strike now.
Things are rarely what they seem, Tyrande. And my son tells me this is a sacred place.
All the more reason to purify it.
They're defending a fixed position. I'm not gonna play their game. We'll draw them out.
You are wasting precious time.
You three are my eyes and ears. Fan out! Prepare a defense!
A test. A trial of patience. Will the wolf behave as a warrior or a king?
Commander Skargash and the Horde forces, they've taken over the blessed temple of Chi-Ji, the Red Crane. It's up to us to get them out. Tyrande wants to charge in headfirst and root them out as fast as possible, but Varian is a little bit more cautious. He's fought Garrosh enough times to know that things don't always are what they seem to be, so he has us gather resources and place a few traps.
They're coming. Get behind the defenses.
Alliance dogs, where are your teeth?
Come out and count them, coward! There's no army here. Only a handful of heroes stand between you and the King of Stormwind. Are you afraid?
Bring up the grunts! Attack!
A massive force was ready to ambush us, but Varian, he's able to turn the tables, play on the orcs' sense of pride, and draw them right into our traps. Wow, you don't mess around with the Pandaren, and after taking out the bulk of the forces without sacrificing a single life, only a handful of the Kor'kron and the commander are left. They quickly fall, and the temple is saved.
The day is ours, and not a drop of blood was shed on holy ground.
I would have charged right in. Many more lives would have been lost in my rush for victory.
There was a time when I would have done the same. But I've learned a lot over the years. I've fallen for too many of Garrosh's tricks. From now on, we define the terms of this engagement. Tyrande, I may not be a politician, but I am a fighter. I know we can win this war. We need to stand together. You have to trust me. Know that I will do the right thing. If we act as one, we cannot fail.
I see that now. Our strength is yours to command, High King. May this be the first of many victories.
A sword is the weapon of a warrior, but patience is the weapon of kings. This day brings victory, but more difficult trials lie ahead.
They do indeed, since throughout our questing, we figure out that Garrosh is after the Divine Bell, an ancient Mogu artifact used to harness the power of the Shah. Varian also tries to convince Jaina to use the Kirin as a weapon against the Horde, but despite what has happened with Faramir, Jaina isn't willing. She has spent her time talking with Caligos about power and how it should be used.
Every day I ask myself, what's the right thing to do? Anduin, you know more than anyone. It's important to separate the Horde from its people. The Sun Reavers still operate within this city. Alliance and Horde work together. As long as we stay above the war, then there's hope for the world as a whole. I see our city as a beacon of light showing the way. If we can trust one another here, then there's hope for the rest of the world.
Their city could be a beacon of light, showing the way for all, but that mindset would soon enough change. The Alliance was able to track down the Divine Bell before the Horde got their hands on it, and they stored it within Darnassus so that its power could not be used. The Sun Reavers within the Kirin, they were then used by Garrosh to infiltrate Darnassus, steal the bell, and bring it back to Garrosh. Jaina finds out about this, and she's not happy to be betrayed from within once again. She gives the order to purge Dalaran without talking to Varian first, shattering his plans for the future.
Jaina, what's happening in Dalaran? Has there been an attack?
The Kirin was betrayed from within. I've handled the situation.
How?
I've purged the Horde from Dalaran. You have what you wanted, Your Majesty. The Kirin belongs to the Alliance.
But you said that...
I know what I said. My trust was misplaced.
What of the Sin'dorei, the Sun Reavers?
Those that surrendered are being taken to the Violet Hold. I make no guarantees about those who chose to fight.
Jaina, you need to talk to me before you act.
How I run the Kirin is my business.
I was trying to negotiate with the Sin'dorei. I was opening discussions to bring them into the Alliance. By attacking their people, you forced their hand.
They chose their own path.
You've driven them back to the Horde.
You're fooling yourself. Once Horde, always Horde. I see that now. I'm mobilizing the Kirin.
Jaina, we've got to work together on this. The Alliance must act as one.
Don't get soft on me, Varian.
Meanwhile, Anduin goes about researching a way to stop Garrosh, and he finds out about a mallet created long ago by the Pandaren, which holds the power to turn the darkness of the Divine Bell into something good. His search leads to us freeing the Monkey King, earning his trust, finding the pieces, and restoring the Harmonic Mallet. With this weapon, the prince then confronts the war chief as he's testing out the Divine Bell on his soldiers, and Anduin actually has the balls to stop him in his tracks. But Garrosh, he isn't too happy with the prince.
Your interference has cost me a great warrior, young prince. You'll pay with your life!
That is where you are wrong, Garrosh.
Mogu made the Divine Bell to create chaos, but the Pandaren created a special mallet to turn the echoes of that chaos into perfect harmony. That mallet was hidden for thousands of years, until now.
Die, whelp! Your alliance must be at its end if you're sending your children against me. I will let you live, so that you can tell your king of the price of his continued defiance.
Garrosh attacked my son? Where is he?
Anduin!
Oh, Anduin, what were you thinking? I should have sent you back to Stormwind.
He's alive, but his bones are shattered.
Send for Velen. Bring him here at once.
My king, I promise you, the Kirin Tor will come down on Garrosh so hard his ancestors will reel. Blood will pay for blood!
Jaina. I will end Garrosh for this. His horde already crumbles beneath him. We will deliver the final blow. Champion, you and Anduin thwarted the Warchief today, and won the Alliance a critical victory. But please, leave me now. I must tend to my son, and prepare for our next battle.
Anduin will take some time to heal, while Garrosh's horde is already crumbling and has been doing so for quite some time. Not everyone within the horde agrees with the direction that he has taken. Several of them have already spoken out, especially when they saw the bombing of Fedamore, and taking the Divine Bell was not so much a choice as it was forced upon them, and then the troll leader Vol'jin, he was struck down by Garrosh's troops after speaking out. This led to the Darkspear Rebellion, in which Vol'jin, after healing from his wounds, he returned to lead the rebellion against Garrosh. The Alliance got word of this and made contact with Vol'jin, pledging their support in bringing down Warchief Garrosh. The Alliance fleet is being prepared for the Siege of Orgrimmar, while Varian, he's also looking for more troops for his campaign against the Horde.
Once upon a time, moments ago in fact, a great king sought help from a trio of powerful dwarves, the Council of Three Hammers. The king's scouts had discovered that Zandalari trolls threatened the dwarven capital. Surely, the king thought, if he helped them with their troll problem, they would give him more troops for his campaign against the Horde. But what the king did not realize is that the dwarves did not trust one another. "We cannot help you," said the Bronzebeard dwarf. "For if we turn our back on the Dark Irons, they will defeat the Wildhammer and take over Ironforge." "We cannot help you," said the Wildhammer dwarf. "For if we turn our back on the Dark Irons, they will defeat the Bronzebeard and take over Ironforge." Oh, the king was furious. "If none of you help, then Ironforge will fall under siege." Only one dwarf offered to help the king. "We will lend you our strength," said Moira of the Dark Iron. "We will trust our dwarven brothers, and we will show them what loyalty means." And so Moira and the High King set out into the snow to save the city, leaving the others to think about their actions.
From once being pulled out of her bed to now working together, how times can change, and in this scenario we find out that the Zandalari, they're kicking up a storm. This is perfect to cover up potential ambushes and bloody disaster. Now if we can stop the storm, then Moira will lead the Forge Guard to the top herself, so we do just that, and together we take out Hakima the Wise and we end the Zandalari threat to the Moreau.
Well fought. I see the Dark Irons are as formidable as ever.
That they are, King Varian. And at the service of the Alliance, I might add.
For that I'm glad. The Bronzebeards and Wildhammers will regret not having been here to share in your glory.
Better they're grateful for the clansmen spared death on this miserable hillock. We sought to protect and impress, not to shame.
Well, you've done just that. Come, let us return to Ironforge and announce your victory to the Council.
The High King, his champions,
and the Dark Iron Dwarves worked together to save Ironforge. The other dwarven leaders were ashamed of their behavior and vowed never again to allow fear or distrust to cloud their judgment. And so it was a human king who helped to unite the dwarven clans so long divided. Free to trust one another, all three dwarven leaders pledged their full strength to the Alliance cause.
Meanwhile,
in the city of Orgrimmar, War Chief Garrosh Hellscream sent goblin dig teams all across the continent of Pandaria. He promised gold and riches to any who could discover for him the hidden secrets of this land. That failed Pandaria was such a dark and powerful energy. To my surprise, his people have found something, right here in the Sacred Vale. What will happen now?
What happens now is that Garrosh has found the heart of the old god Yogg-Saron, which he then drops in the sacred waters of the Vale to empower it, causing a massive explosion and destruction to the land. It was time to siege Orgrimmar and kick Garrosh out of the mantle of War Chief. Both the Alliance and Horde Rebellion worked together on this, but at Bladefish Bay we discovered that Vol'jin's rebellion, they were unable to secure the bay. Warlord Zayla and their Dragon Maw, they're holding the shores, and we must take out their cannons before their ships can make landfall, so that's exactly what we do.
You think you have won? We are orcs, pure of blood, commanded by the greatest war chief who ever lived. Your blood will fill this bay.
Well done.
Theramore.
Landing parties, form up! Footmen to the front!
The Dragon Maw are supporting the war chief.
Yes, my scouts learned all about this one. Warlord Zayla. Bring her proto-drake down, and the rest of the Dragon Maw will crumble.
We're going to need some serious firepower.
Commandeer those towers! Turn the anti-air batteries around and blast her from the sky! Some of you should stay behind to hold the landing zone.
Dragon Maw clan, retake the docks and push them into the sea! In the name of Hellscream and the true Horde!
It worked! The proto-drake is falling! We've done it!
The bigger they are.
We'll hold the docks for the remaining landing parties. Follow the path to the gates of Orgrimmar and make contact with Vol'jin and his revolutionaries.
We'll see if he's managed to keep up his end of the bargain.
The gates crumble, and our forces take on everything that Garrosh has to offer, from his dark shaman to his captured dinosaurs. Even the minions of the old gods are unable to hold us back, until finally, Garrosh is the only one left standing. He has a vision for his true horde, and will stop at nothing at making that vision a reality. But not even with the powers of an old god is he able to stop the combined might of the Alliance and the Horde, and the war chief is finally brought low.
No! It cannot end like this. What I have seen.
You disappoint me, Garrosh. You are not worthy of your father's legacy.
His punishment is not for you alone to decide.
I won't let you take him.
We have all suffered from his atrocities. My people, more than any other. Let him stand trial in Pandaria. There, we will mete out justice for all.
Ugh, look at them. Already they plot against us. Seize this moment, Varian. Dismantle the Horde.
Guardsmen!
Father,
What are you doing?
What a king must do.
I will speak to your war chief.
I speak for the Horde.
Very well. The Horde has committed heinous crimes, Vol'jin. But some among you fought against Garrosh's tyranny. For that, I am willing to end this bloodshed. But know this. If your Horde fails to uphold honor as Garrosh did, we will end you.
Despite working together for this very moment, when it came down to it, neither side was willing to let the other take the killing blow. Instead, they decide to place Garrosh on trial, while Varian speaks with the new war chief, namely Vol'jin, and they're willing to end the bloodshed. He explains that the desire to inflict more suffering on the Horde is one that he understands, but how many more Alliance will number among the dead if we invaded Thunderbluff, Azora and the Echo Isles, not to mention how we would cover the conquered people. Today we won justice and have given the Horde an opportunity to atone by supporting their rebellion. Further bloodshed would be for vengeance alone, and it would reap vengeance in return. He'd rather focus on winning the peace, station a garrison near Veremor, investigate cleansing the plague from Gilnean land so they can rebuild, and they must contain Sylvanas. From here on forward, the Alliance will be proactive. Never again can there be another the likes of Hellscream. Anduin of course agrees with his father and thinks that replacing a warmonger with a leader that they can work with, that is their only chance for peace in the future. While Jaina, she is the complete opposite. She believes Wrynn will rue the day that he allowed the Horde to name another war chief. We should have kept fighting. Who's to say that in a few years from now, this new war chief won't get any ideas in his troll head. It's interesting to see how Jaina now embodies what Varian used to be, and Anduin what Varian wants to be, while Anduin in turn tries to be more like his father. Either way, this concludes the events in Pandaria, which leads us to the novel War Crimes, in which Garrosh's trial took place. This book was used as a refresher on lore already told, while also wrapping up some of the storylines that have been going on, while also opening up the way for the next expansion. The trial takes place in Pandaria, with Tyrande as the accuser, and Bane trying to defend Garrosh. Witnesses are called to the stand, to which the bronze dragons, Chromie and Kairos Dormu, they use the Hourglass of Time to show past events to the courtroom, to grant them visions of the past. Even Varian was called to be a witness, in which they showed a moment of him dragging Moira out of her bed, Anduin talks some sense into him, and the formation of the council. Bane then asked the king if he believed that people could change. He was not the man that he was several years ago, so if he had made those changes, could someone like Garrosh do it as well? To this, the king could give no different answer, but yes. Tyrande then questioned him, asked him if in his darkest moments he had ever calculated a plan and executed a plan to exterminate the entire population of a major city. No, replied Varian, to which Tyrande turned around and proclaimed that, while King Varian may indeed have dealt with similar challenges, like Garrosh had, he is not, has not been, and will never be the same as Garrosh Hellscream. Remember how during the Wrath of the Lich King period, these two were so very similar, and now look at the path that both of them have walked. Varian kept an open mind and listened to those around him, and yes, he also underwent the ritual to regain control, while Garrosh surrounded himself with people that followed his ideas of the world, and anyone that disagreed with him, that one was either cast out or struck down. Now there is a fair bit to say about Garrosh and the path that he followed and the people around him, but perhaps that's a subject for another day. For now, let's focus on this story. The trial reached its end, but the verdict didn't matter, since the Black Dragon Wrathgate and the Bronze Dragon Kairos Dormu, they worked together on setting Garrosh free. Wrathgate had seen a vision of the Legion returning to Azeroth, and he wanted nothing more than to secure the future of the planet and keep it safe.
You were there! Is it true, then, what happened in Orgrimmar? That fool king! I did everything in my power. The whole world was his. He needed only seize it. Oh, sure, another year of fighting, enormous casualties trying to take Thunder Bluff, but the rest of the Horde would have caved eventually. Tong! Drink! Now! What? Yes, I was backing the Alliance. I thought Hellscream's victory was assured before he turned half of his Horde against him, so I changed my allegiance. Oh, don't look so surprised. I'm a black dragon. My loyalties are my own. But that idiot Wrynn, High King indeed. Why did he allow another war chief? He could have united the world under the Alliance banner. What a fool I was to trust his ambition. Should have taken over the throne room myself, like Auntie Onyxia. Get things done!
And now they decided to take Garrosh back in time, around 35 years from our perspective, to an alternate reality. In a reality where the orcs were just about to drink the demon blood offered by Gul'dan and the Legion. With Warlord Zayla, who had survived the Siege of Orgrimmar, and the Infinite Dragonflight attacking the temple, Kairos and Garrosh, they used the Hourglass of Time and they made their escape. The attack was repelled, and Zayla called to retreat as she realized that the mission of setting Garrosh free was accomplished, but Refion's plans didn't go exactly as planned. Garrosh had not learned a thing over the years. He had no intention of leading this alternate horde in the defense of Azeroth. Instead, he murdered Kairos and he formed the Iron Horde, not to defend Azeroth, but to attack it. To conquer it with the horde that he envisioned, conquer it and make it the world that he had dreamed of. The Dark Portal turned red. The Iron Horde tried to invade Azeroth, and it was the Draenei Marad who informed Varian about the warlords of our time periods, the warlords that we were about to face again.
King Varian, the hour grows late. You must sign the declaration of war.
I was just a child when my father rushed to confront this same evil. He didn't understand these warlords at all. That mistake cost him his life, and brought this kingdom to ruin.
You are not your father.
I know. But how can I succeed where he failed?
You can start by trusting my counsel. I have faced them before.
On Draenor, you were there. All those years ago.
Yes. Believe me, they are not invincible.
Then tell me of them, Marad. Tell me everything.
Very well.
Marad informs the king of what he knows about the warlords, namely Karkov Bladefist, Gromar's Hellscream, Duratan and Kilrog. Last but not least, he explains his own history with the Horde and why he so desperately wants to fight them.
You now know their leaders. You know what forged them into the monstrosities they have become. Put your seal on that order, and I will be the first to answer the call.
Why are you so eager for this fight, Marad? For a paladin, you seem as bloodthirsty as the enemy.
It is not blood I seek. When you look at me, what do you see?
I see a paragon, a champion of the light.
What you cannot see is the burden I carry each day.
He was there when the orcs assaulted Shafraf City, and he was ordered to take the refugees to safety. Instead of fulfilling this mission, he let the burning desire for revenge take hold, as he left the refugees to find their own way out of there, so he could go back and murder some orcs. Satisfied with the killing, he went back to search for the refugees, but he found all of them dead on the streets. The light that he had promised would be with them had forsaken them instead, just as he had.
I know I may not return. But if there is even the barest chance of preventing the atrocities I witnessed from happening again, then I offer myself gladly.
We are all haunted by the past, Marad. Few of us ever get the opportunity to change it. Summon our champions! Make ready for war! Azeroth needs its heroes now, more than ever.
And so the call went out for Azeroth champions to venture forth through the Dark Portal and take the battle to the Iron Horde. Both the Alliance and Horde, they stood together against the might of the Iron Horde, but Varian himself, he didn't play a major part during Warlords of Draenor. He showed up to congratulate the general on his successes in the campaign and with the garrison, but as we slowly but surely dismantled the Iron Horde, alternate Gul'dan saw his opportunity. He once again offered the demon blood, and this time there was no Garrosh to stop the orcs since we already killed him, and Gul'dan took control of the Iron Horde and turned it into the Fel Horde. We now had to assault Hellfire Citadel within Tanaan Jungle, and it was Varian who showed up in the Alliance garrison to offer his insight as to what we should do. A direct assault would take a heavy toll, but the sea lanes were still open. If we would attack by both land and sea, then Gul'dan's horde would have no quarter. It is time to build ourselves a shipyard, assault Tanaan by sea, and establish a foothold.
Everything rests upon your shoulders, Commander. Build us a navy so we can assault Gul'dan from all sides. Good luck.
We did just that. We ventured forth into Tanaan Jungle, assaulted Hellfire Citadel itself, and we brought down anything and everything that Gul'dan had in store. Not even our command himself was strong enough to take us out, and we liberated Draenor from Legion's influence.
Gul'dan! You made a pact.
However, the whole reason why this connection between our Azeroth and his alternate Draenor came to be, that was because of Reffion and his vision of the Legion coming to take another bite out of Azeroth. Here we see alternate Gul'dan being sent over by our command into our world and actually start the next Legion invasion by opening up the gateway at the tomb of Sargeras. By trying to build up an army to fight against it, Reffion actually caused the next invasion to happen, and it's Khadgar that goes about warning the world of this new threat.
The Burning Legion has returned.
My son, a terrible darkness has returned to our world. As before, it seeks to annihilate everything that we hold dear. I go to face it, knowing I may not return.
They're coming! They're coming back!
All my life I have lived by the sword. I've seen kingdoms burn, and watched brave heroes die in vain. It's been difficult for me to trust after losing so much. But from you, I have learned patience, tolerance, and faith.
Open fire!
Anduin, I now believe, as you do, that peace is the noblest aspiration. But to preserve it, you must be willing to fight.
Where during Mists of Pandaria, heroes were sent out with the initial strike force, now it's actually Varian who's leading the Alliance attack, while Sylvanas Windrunner is leading the Horde. The High King has learned much in his time, and he's able to trust and work together with the Horde, while the rest of our forces join them as soon as possible. On the Broken Shore, we battled our way through ranks upon ranks of demons, trying to get to the source of the invasion and stop it before it could spread even further. Tyrion Fordring was taken out by Croesus, but by working together, the Alliance and Horde are able to force the demon to retreat, and it's time for the final confrontation.
We'll take the ridge and cover your flank.
Sylvanas, thank you.
Good luck, Varian.
And you.
As the Alliance confronts Gul'dan directly, the Horde tries to cover their flank, but the forces they face on the ridge are destroying them. 3 Legion ships are constantly shooting out their fell beams, while demonic forces keep pouring out of the portal.
There are too many of them.
Everyone, pull back to me! We make our stand here!
The Alliance isn't having any better luck. Small waves of demons are sent out at first, but the portal created gives Gul'dan access to the near limitless might of the Legion.
We return! To conquer this puny world! And burn it to a husk!
This is a Legion invasion, unlike any that we've seen before, and although the Alliance forces seem to be vastly outnumbered, Varian still thinks that a victory is possible. He calls out the orders, but up above, Sylvanas and the Horde, they have a better view of the battle that's going on down below, and they're unable to hold their ground.
They're coming from behind! Coming of flame!
War Chief!
Do not let the Horde die this day.
Victory is ours! Hold fast! Mercator! We finish this now! Call in the gunship!
Way ahead of you, sir! Transangulating our positions right now!
Get it! Get it! Oh Lord! Push forward! And get Windrunner's archers to clear the skies!
Trust her!
Without the Horde, we'll be overrun! We must retreat!
Get everyone to the gunship!
Everyone! Fall back!
Take this to my son.
You will be remembered as the king who sacrificed his life for nothing.
For the Alliance.
Varian Wrynn gave everything that he had for the world, for the Alliance, for his people and his son. Greymane takes the letter that he wrote back to King Anduin as they all mourn the loss of a great king. With the death of the king, a great burden is now placed upon Anduin's shoulders. His father was a great strategist, yet his armies crumbled at the broken shores. How can he succeed where the wolf had failed? But Valerie assures him that he does not stand alone in this battle, while Tyrande compliments him for his wisdom of accepting the Illidari, Illidan's demon hunters, into their ranks. Jaina, however, reminds them all of the Horde's treachery. It's time to bring them to heel like the dogs that they are. Faramir, Dalaran, and now again they are betrayed by the Horde at the broken shore, but the others, they don't see it that way. They can't fight a war at two fronts. They need the Horde's strength in the battle against the Legion, but Jaina disagrees. She believes that the fight alongside the cowards who betrayed his father and left them all to die would dishonor everything that Varian stood for. Dalaran will protect the Eastern Kingdoms, but she will not allow the Horde to set foot within her city. With that, Jaina teleports away and Anduin wonders what to do. His father is dead, it was a disaster at the broken shore. People like Greymane and Jaina, they're fixed on revenge and everything's falling apart. What happens next is a story still being told, but Anduin is the son of the wolf, the son of Lo'Gosh, High King Varian Wrynn, champion of Gul'dan. Like Gul'dan during the War of the Ancients, Varian also died to numerous amounts of demons, and legends say that Lo'Gosh's unyielding will and sheer ferocity, it enabled him to push through the boundaries of the afterlife to aid his people. Who knows what the future might bring, what role the son of the wolf might play, but for now, this is where the story of Varian ends. As always, thank you very much for watching everyone. Subscribe if you like my videos, leave a like if you enjoyed this one, and until next time guys, see ya!
King has fallen. A father. A friend. A warrior. Defender of the Alliance. He was a beacon of hope. A leader without measure. A man who would never accept defeat. He was our shield against the storm. Wherever he has gone, Varian Wrynn will remain a hero. Always.